All right, everybody. So, welcome to the live stream here. Looks like we're going to be off to a little bit of a slow start. But for those of you watching after the fact, we're going to kind of start talking about Powerstroke reliability. We're going to start with 7.3s and we're going to kind of work our way up to current production and what I kind of think about what's going on with that and how I think reliability has changed over the years, which will get kind of interesting as we really get into the DPFs and the emissions systems that are kind of on today. So we're going to start with old school, work our way forward as time goes on. Like I said, and we'll probably go back and forth as this live stream gets going and people get in the chats and start asking questions and interacting. We always treat the chat as the primary topic once we get going. 7.3s, we're going to start with those. Obviously, the diesel that got a lot of us that are here into Powerstrokes in the first place, the 7.3, still arguably a very good engine. It does begin to get a little outclassed in the power department with current standards. Hey, guys that are joining in now, welcome to the live stream. Don't forget to get in the chat and ask some questions here. You got an IDI. I wasn't going to go back as far as the IDIs because I don't know quite enough about them. I know that the 6.9 IDI is the same block moving forward into the 7.3s, but things got kind of interesting and power numbers started jumping as we got into like the turbocharged. I think it was like 93 was the first year of the actual Powerstroke, 94. I can't quite remember, but I do know that the IDIs, I'm just not familiar with them. If I had to guess, they're probably very reliable trucks because, it's set built on the same engine platform that the 7.3 was. But we're going to kind of stick to some of a little bit newer 7.3 Powerstrokes. I'm going to give this one a pretty high rating that the 7.3 is one of the most reliable diesels. There's caveats to that. They're certainly not perfect. Sometimes you got to, especially as these trucks get older, with the high pressure oil pump systems needing addressed now many times. But the transmission was pretty stout, especially in factory form. You really didn't have many issues with it. It's not the most reliable transmission. The 5R that came in the 6-liter was overall a much better transmission, but the 4R that laid the groundwork it's used mainly for racing trucks now. A lot of people will take a 4R behind a 6-liter or even 6.7s, I believe, too, and use them to drag race. They're great when built properly. They're excellent. They're easy to work on. Glow plugs are easy to get to. It's the hose system that sucks. I convert it to an automatic fuel pump. Juan, what's the hose system on the IDI? I'm not as familiar with them, but anything I do know, people say they're very easy. Only 5 horsepower is given with the turbo on an IDI. With the turbo, can you bump up the fuel? Are they mechanically injected trucks? It would be cool to do I like anything diesel related, so even the old stuff, it'd be cool to one day mess with and do a build on, but I just don't know enough and don't really have enough time to really venture much into that. Those of you guys that are just joining, don't forget to hit that like button and get in the chat here with any questions or comments. We're happy to address them as we keep moving. Excuse me, I'm getting over a little bit of a cold here. The 7.3 really was a great truck. Pretty basic interior, not a lot wrong going there. The turbos were very, very reliable. In fact, I hear a lot of 7.3 guys give newer diesel trucks a hard time because newer trucks do tend to go through turbochargers a lot more frequently. That's improved, though. The longer VGT systems have been around, that's not as big of an issue as it once was, but it is kind of funny those 7.3 guys really hold on to how much more reliable those turbos were. It's because there isn't really much to them. And they weren't pushing crazy boost numbers either. I'd be interested in anybody in here with a 7.3 that's really pushed higher boost levels that can kind of comment on reliability of the turbochargers as you up the power. Stock numbers, though, really the only issues with 7.3s is they can leak oil from a few places, and they're getting older now, truthfully. So a degree of that reliability isn't the same as what it once was. The manual tends to drag on fuel systems, but the auto gives the full fuel a boost. Bad part, I had to convert the oil pressure release. It's shaped like a tuna can, so I put an oil catch can. Helps. That's neat. I really haven't ever been around the IDI stuff. I'd love to kind of mess with one, but just they're not very common by me right now. Probably won't ever really be super common. I don't know that they were crazy common back in the day either. Joe, with our first kind of question here, what's your stance on the crankcase vent reroute on a 6.0? So, honestly, I think this is a topic that's been blown way out of proportion that never needed to be. Quite frankly, a proper functioning crankcase vent, whether that's the atmosphere, into your exhaust, into your air intake, it really doesn't matter. The biggest thing I think is that people aren't running clogged filters. I gutted my '03 crankcase vent filter because it's not a serviceable part and you can't buy new ones anymore. So I pulled the media out, which was really just like a sponge, but it becomes very dense over time with all the oil and it's not really venting pressure well. The later styles, I don't really feel like you need to necessarily um, take all the filter media out of them, but making sure that you actually address it and don't have a clogged one. Um, so never. Yeah, you got to be careful with the block. We see this a lot in 6.7 Powerstrokes. This became a big issue. They've re-released their crankcase vent filter systems, I think twice, at least once, to like an internal baffle system. The ones that originally came with filters, they were getting clogged, and that was kind of an issue. I think it really kind of gets overlooked in the 6-liter world because everybody just cares about, should I vent it to the atmosphere? Should I leave it factory intact? And they never really address, I think, the bigger issue with that setup, and that is that those filters do clog and they need addressed. The earlier '03 ones you can convert to the later style ones. You need a late '04 or newer driver side valve cover. You need the Fickum brackets for the newer style as well. They're a 2-piece instead of 1-piece, like the older style. And then you'll need the actual crankcase vent filter itself, which it bolts onto the outside as opposed to the inside on the earlier styles. I think the later ones do a better job of venting pressure. There's just more openings for pressure to get out as opposed to the earlier style ones. So that is another thing to kind of keep in perspective as you're looking at messing with those setups. But as outside of that, once it's properly functioning, I don't think it really matters. If you get a little oil in your intake, it's not really going to be a big deal. Maybe massive amounts, sure. Like if you have a lot of blow by, that's one thing. You could go to a baffled catch can and back into your intake would kind of resolve that problem, but it's another maintenance item as well. The other thing, people vent to atmosphere. I think the biggest issue is that the system itself is not clogged, and relieving that pressure appropriately is the biggest issue. I wouldn't overthink it too much. I'd go with your preference outside of that. What up, Hammer Down? How you doing, brother? We got the big water jug tonight, guys. Yeah, well, and that's one of the biggest things I think people overlook, and it's not getting overlooked in 6.7s because it's part of the problem causing like upper oil pan leaks, which are very expensive to have fixed on those. So people are kind of addressing it more. But on 6 liters, I think it's still kind of an area that I don't think gets the attention it should, for especially as these trucks get old. They're not new. The oldest 6 liters out there over 20 years old at this point, and even the newest ones are getting close too. So I need a 6.0 Harley that isn't a beater. Steve, is that to put in the Ram? Because that would be awesome. 6.0, I installed an oil catcher breather. It helps vent the pressure, actually saved the engine. Yeah, I think going to a catch can setup or something similar, as long as it still is venting pressure, I think is fine. Place to catch the oil, and so you don't have a bunch of oil all over the place, is definitely beneficial for them. Like I said, I think it's a topic that I used to only ever hear people talk about, should you reroute it or leave it factory? And there was like some diehard camps on both ends of it. I think the bigger issue has a lot more to do with clogged filters. than anything else. Well, if it was a good Harley, I'd keep it that way, but a rusted out 07 6-liter would be a good Dodge donor. Sounds like to me like you have two trucks to buy, man. You need to buy the donor truck to put a 6-liter in a Ram, and then you need a Harley just to have a good old 6-liters floating around, because they're pretty awesome. Putting plastic type booster can break in time and suck in the plastic. Juan, I'm not sure what you're talking about. The only thing that comes to mind is I've seen people have like little fan things in their intake trying to create like a turboed effect, and they don't work. But I'm not 100% sure what plastic booster you're talking about. How are the new Ford diesels? Man, the newer Ford diesels are absolutely amazing. I have a 16, and it is just so much nicer of a truck than my 04 is. I love my 04. I couldn't get rid of it. But they've gotten nicer. If you take another jump up, like I'll be seeing my buddy Steve, who's got Steve, I forget, is it a 24 or a 22? I can't remember what year your truck is, but he's got a gorgeous platinum 22. I have an XLT 16. He's got a platinum 22. You would never know they're both Super Duties by how much different the interior is. They've done such a nice job like upgrading the interiors and how nice they are. Even my brother has a 16 platinum, which the interior is nicer than my XLT, but it's not as nice as they've come in the 20 and newer trucks. The interiors are just amazing. But from a reliability standpoint, they have continued to improve emission systems. They all still kind of suck, don't get me wrong, but the emission systems are getting better the longer they've been around. DPFs are not failing at the same rate. They are not currently limiting horsepower, at least in factory form. Even if you add, Banks has the Deranger tuner that works well with these trucks as well. Overall, they are more reliable. They don't tend to have transmission issues. They don't have any major engine issues. The crankcase vent system, I think, is still worthwhile addressing. The CP4 pump is really the only major issue on the 6.7s. There's two ways to kind of address this. One is the SNS Disaster Prevention Kit. SPE also has a nicer one. I would not buy the budget systems off eBay and Amazon and expect them to work, as well as the nice kits. You are trying to prevent a very expensive repair bill, so go with one of those two kits I mentioned if you have one. And it doesn't prevent the CP4 from failing. The CP4 can still fail, however, it prevents all that debris being thrown through your system and destroying the injectors, causing a ton of repairs, because it's a fuel pump, it's a whole set of injectors, it's fuel rails. It's just a crazy mess of things. Even if you're doing it yourself, it's very expensive. And I think you need to program the injectors individually. I don't know of any affordable software that does that, though I haven't looked into that yet either. So that is my only major issue. NOx sensors go on them. DEF heaters it can go from time to time. The NOx sensors are expensive. The DEF heaters are pretty inexpensive. You can get them on Amazon for $100. I have one in my truck. It's been working fine for over a year now. No issues with the DEF heater. So all in all, they are reliable trucks. The other fix for the CP4 pump is to turn around and do a DCR pump. That's a newer product on the market. That was a redesign, a housing for an existing pump. It doesn't require tuning. It's a drop-in setup. It's a big drop-in because it's a project to do, but it is a really nice kit. I will likely be doing an SNS disaster prevention kit on my truck first at some point. And then later down the road, I'll be doing an install video on the DCR pump as well. But so we'll eventually have both of those videos up on the channel for people to check out. But Initially, it will be after April. Yeah, that's right. Um, oh yeah, I need to actually put that on my to-do list to get a passport. Let me add that now so I don't forget. My notes on my phone are starting to get out of hand. Because we're going to take a trip to Canada. So yeah, 350 Mac, that is really, the new trucks are excellent. They are good and reliable. Steve, I can't wait to check out the Platinum with the pushers as well. That's going to be awesome. A 2024, man, that's a great truck. It's going to be reliable. It's going to be expensive, but overall, that's going to be a reliable truck. It's going to definitely have a warranty with it. So I really wouldn't worry about a whole lot until you get towards the end of that warranty. But that should be a truck that you have very minimal problems with. Make sure you're using frequently or like busy fuel stations, so you know you're not getting diesel that's sat around for a while. That can be hard on the pumps. Be careful with your fuel additives. You don't want to use alcohol-based fuel additives on them, because that can be again, that's another hard part on the pumps. But solid truck, man, you'll love it. That plastic fan is yes, it is. Yeah, those intakes are dumb. They were a terrible idea. Whoever decided to do that. Before I start investing in Sinister Diesel, do you? Yeah. So don't Southern Smoke. I'm just gonna call you Smoke. Don't buy Sinister stuff, man. It's a lot of overpriced stuff. Some of it is a lot of marketing hype that really isn't what it's cracked up to be. What are you looking at doing? And I can help kind of point you in the right direction. Sinister tends to be overpriced for what you're getting. I don't recommend it at all. I don't think it's worth the money. Your money can be better spent somewhere else. And some of their stuff is just a complete and utter gimmick, and that's all. So let me know what you want to do, and I'll get you links, and I'll get you set up with an area that you can get some good quality parts from, and not get ripped off, and probably save you a lot of money in the process too. You were looking at a DCR. Yeah, the DCR I think is the absolute best option. If you can afford, I think it's like $2,000. If $2,000, if you can afford it, it is definitely the best setup to go with. Followed, a close second is those disaster prevention kits from good companies. But the DCR is the actual fix to the problem across the board. I do like Arch Oil. I've used a lot of Arch Oil in the 6-liter. I had what I thought to be a bad injector on your 6-liter, but ended up looks like being a bad Ficum. I haven't checked out any of the Icon series scanners. I'm a big 4Scan fan. It's reasonable for $35. You get the adapter. I have a video where I added a remote start to my truck. It didn't have remote start. With that scanner, I was able to turn it on, program a key, and now I have remote start on my truck. And it's a great use for reading different parameters as well. But I have heard that the Icon scanners are quite good now too. So maybe in the future I'll check them out, but I'm not looking at spending the money on something when the 4Scan is really a great. You just need a laptop and a hookup and a cable to use them. Draining water separator, often overlooked. Is there any way to pull the EGR cooler without removing the intake manifold? On a 6-liter, no. 6-liter and the 6. I don't know about the 6.4. On a 6-liter, you can. It bolts to the bottom of the intake manifold. Maybe you could drop it. No, because you need to get the I was gonna say maybe you could if you took out the oil cooler housing, but you can't get the oil cooler housing out without the intake manifold. So no, you can take the intake manifold out without pulling the turbo. Some guys really don't like pulling the turbo. That is possible. I have done that as long as you don't have an early 6 liter that has um, '03 and early '04 6 liters had a cross member on the intake manifold that you could not pull it out without removing the entire intake from the system. So, no, to get the EGR out and replace or whatever you want to do with it, you need to actually have the intake manifold out. Pusher, PPE, and HS and Fleece, all great companies. Banks, SNS, I agree. Steve has a smoke covered there. If you have suspicion of something, just changing the suspicious one with a good one in motor, then test it. But yeah, Joe, so what is your FICM actually doing? Is it low voltage, or is it coming up with like 1 and 2 bad injectors? What is your truck actually doing? And I can help kind of tell you if it's going to be an injector or a FICM. The first thing I always tell people with that, make sure all of your injectors are plugged in correctly. Make sure the plugs, there's 3 plugs on the back of a FICM. Make sure they're plugged in securely on there. Sometimes it's a wiring harness issue and not so much an actual FICM issue. But if it's low voltage, then yeah, you need to get a new power supply for it. Which honestly, the cheap ones on like Amazon and stuff, we'll see how much these are. They're not super expensive. FICM power supply. Yeah, like 50 some, $60. There's some a little more, 100. But a lot of people have good reviews of these super budget cheap ones out there. I think the one my brother got was like $75 a while ago, so there wasn't as many options out there. Super, super cheap, and it's running strong today. Oh, this is funny. I just saw a link about somebody looking for the FICM mounting bushings, and here they are on Amazon. Also, I just bought the Icon T7. I'm excited to try it once I get it. Yeah, I guess at some point I'm going to need to look at this Icon T7. And I will say this: there is definitely a man. Could they make it look any more like a Step One product? They are getting expensive. T10, T7 seems reasonable at $400. $1,700 for their real. And then there's a subscription. All right, we'll get off that. I'll have to check that stuff out at some point. So I will say the intake manifold gaskets are technically reusable. I will say this: I always like to throw a new set on there because it's cheap insurance. They're not too bad to do, honestly. Mostly looking to keep it stock. It's already been something studded. I'd like to have coolant filter. I'm not looking to get a. So smoke, from what you have right now, I did a video recently on like a build series for these trucks, and I really think that is honestly what you would probably benefit from, because it's not like adding a ton of power. It was really about I'm getting you a link here. It was really about just kind of adding, like making it perform as well as it's going to in its relative stock form without adding a ton of extra power, without bigger injectors or turbos. I call it my stage 1 build series. And it really just talks about a lot of like airflow modifications you can do: intake manifold, exhaust manifolds, bigger intercoolers, some slightly nicer intercooler pipes, turbo back exhaust. And I kind of talk about a lot of these things, and they're really good for people looking for like, hey, I want to modify my truck a little bit, but I also don't want to go crazy. I'm not looking for a 700 horsepower monster. I just want my truck to run really well. And that video kind of settles a lot of those conversations. So something to check out later. I just put the link in the comments there. I do plan to do a follow-up to that where I go a little more into like a little bit higher end of a build, but that video will really talk about a lot of quality stuff. It's got plenty of companies to go from. BD Diesel for the exhaust manifolds is my favorite. O-Dog for a ported intake manifold. CSF for the intercooler. SoCal Billet for intercooler pipes. I have links to exhausts in there, but Magnaflow, MBRP are all great companies for that. Intakes, you can kind of go a couple different ways. Factory one is honestly not a terrible setup, and it filters really, really well. Or you could go with a no limit fab. The other option would be, I'm going to try this on mine with one of the cheap intakes from eBay, but with an AFE filter on top just to see. But I'm running big injectors, big turbo, so I need a little more airflow. But if you're keeping to a stock turbo and injectors, like the factory intake's going to be fine unless you just want to church the look up a little bit, then I understand. But you won't really gain a lot from that intake on that setup. Even if you run like a race tune on it, you still wouldn't necessarily have a whole lot to gain from an intake with those current setups. Let's see here. Oh, also the coolant filtration. I have one on my truck. It's kind of it catches some stuff. It doesn't catch like a wild amount. I could take it or leave it, honestly. There is a coolant filter that does a higher job. IPR Research has a nice coolant filter to consider that filters a higher amount of coolant than just these kind of bypass setups that a lot of us are running. Number 6 injector buzz test, circuit high code for number 6 voltage is fine. Just one injector. That kind of makes me want to say that you have an injector issue. So it could be one of two things. You could have a bad injector. I want to say you have a bad injector or a bad harness at that. However, it could be that you have a failure in the logic side of the Thickum. While not as common, still does happen. I would look and see if you can't get your hands on finding somebody that has a 6-liter around you that would let you pop their Thickum on for a minute just to check. It wouldn't harm their Thickum at all. But other than that, I want to say that typically when logic side goes, it's like you'll get like 2 to 4 injectors on opposite banks. So like your number 6 and a number 3, along with a 5 and a 4 will go. So move number 8 output to number 6 and it did click. I'm not quite sure what that means, Joe. Do you mean it followed that? Like you moved your number 8 to number 6 and the code followed? Yes, Lucas, I can post the link. I have it here. This was literally just on one of the Powerstroke forums. This is an affiliate link, just as a heads up. But yeah, this was just a conversation I had with somebody, and they were looking for those. I need to go find them at some point and see if I can get it there. One, I would check out Thickum. I would check out Forescan first before you look at buying anything. You can get a free code to use, like their extended version. It does quite a lot. You'd be really surprised at all the different modules you can see. Like every module on the truck you can access from that. Also found out my truck is an 04.5. Is there anything mechanically different from the regular 04s? 04 6 liters are actually kind of a weird monster. There's three distinct different setups for the engine. The first is this is the style I actually have. It has the old high pressure oil pump, the old. I'm going to just talk about the main things. There's a few other nuances, but the main things that are different. High pressure oil pump and the oil rails and the components that go with them. So I have an early 04 that has the round pump, the straight oil logs, and just a standpipe, no dummy plugs. The turbo is also different. I have a 10 blade larger turbo. Well, I guess the blades are taller on it. The early 04s and 03 trucks had the biggest turbo. When you get into the 04.5s, there's two different setups you can have. Typically, all of them have the 13 blade turbo, but it's still larger than what the 05 turbo was in both intake and exhaust side of it. But you can have the old style pump with the new oil rails where they're wavy. They have standpipe and dummy plugs. These are the ones that can be problematic with either cheap parts or poor installation. That is actually one of my favorite setups to have. I wish I had that setup in my truck, but I do not. And then you can have all of the new stuff. You can have the newer high pressure oil pump, which is much more reliable. Caveat: there's a snap to connect fitting that is prone to failure if it has not been updated coming off of that. So that's kind of big difference number one. Again, the standpipes and dummy plugs can also be a little problematic. The 04.5 and later trucks were all much more prone to hot no start issues due to high pressure oil leaks. The earlier truck doesn't idle quite as nicely and is more prone to high pressure oil pump failure. However, I see a lot of guys that get diagnosed with a high pressure oil pump failure. However, it's not that it's an actual failure. It's that they got a misdiagnosed truck and it's actually a leak. Typically off that snap to connect fitting is probably one of the number one culprits. Dummy plugs and standpipes are right there behind it as well. I would replace all of them on mine if you don't know if they've been addressed. I would make sure to use high quality parts. Ford would be number one. However, they're not the only ones making good parts in those in that area. That's where I've read you can reuse them, but everything is broken on the engine. So yeah, it may be best to just replace them then. I really love S&B for a relatively factory truck. Once you ever consider larger turbos or injectors, I no longer like S&B for the 6 liter. Their design's too restrictive. They used to have a bigger setup that would float a little more air. And they've streamlined it and made it fit really nice. It looks sharp in the engine bay, but it does not flow air for like people looking to modify it. If you're sticking with stock injectors and a stock turbo, or even stock injectors with a stage 1 turbo, then yeah, you're probably okay and don't have anything to worry about. But if you're looking at going like bigger injectors, like even a 175 stock with a like stage 2 turbo, which is a great setup, then I don't recommend the S&B anymore. I do like it. I think their quality is very nice, but they've really kind of focused on factory replacement as opposed to upgrade flowing more air in the last like 5 or 6 years. But I do want to take a moment and shout out my turbo sponsor, Turbo Time USA, 60 Bros, for 10% off. That is an affiliate discount code, but you do get 10% off their built turbo. So big fan there. On the topic of Fickum stuff, how would you address one connector having 2 broken tabs and another? Lucas, I would replace the entire harness. I do think you can get new pinouts for it, like the new plastic piece, and you can technically just repin them all. That sounds like a literal nightmare, but definitely one of those two. You need to replace it. I would be careful going with the super cheap Fickum harnesses. I have heard that they've gotten better. over what they used to be. There was a lot of people that had issues with them before, whereas I do think that has gotten better. Yeah, you can get a pinout. So if you wanted to keep your factory harness and fix those broken tabs, you can get each of those connectors. They're on Amazon for 31 bucks. I would be cautious with the super cheap Fickum harnesses. If anyone running the SCT4 tuner don't update it, updated mine and lost the option to turn. Oh yeah, Smoke, that happened a long time ago actually. But some tuners still mess with stuff, so don't worry. It'll be okay if you get a custom tune. Lucas, thank you, man. I mean, and I have Amazon affiliate codes on all, or links on all of my videos, so you don't even have to buy the thing you're buying. You can just go through there, and that definitely goes back to the channel. I support thank you guys for anyone showing the channel support. I do really appreciate it. Moving number 6 to number 8, injector, and it did not buzz test, replace harness, new and no change, so it must be. Yeah, Joe, it sounds like it is probably the logic side of your Fickum, which you can't, like, that needs programmed. I would reach out to the guys at Fickum Repair. I'm not affiliated with them at all, but they do really good work with those and will definitely get you squared away. That's who I would be. That'd be my number one go-to. I think Blessed Performance and ID Speed sell whole Fickums as well. You could go to eBay and look for, or Facebook Marketplace, and try and find just a replacement. Let's see what's on eBay. And eBay does have good buyer protection anymore, so you would want to buy a whole Fickum. Don't. Here's a pre-owned one for $200. Here's a repair service for yours that you could send for $135. Here's a pre-owned for $125. So yeah, they're definitely out there. You can definitely find them for, I'd say, on average $150 to $200-ish. It looks like. Some of them are, or here's one for $100, but it's just a core if you wanted to send out and have fixed. So there's some options there for you. Trump loves the 6-liter. It's a fantastic truck. One of the greatest trucks that ever trucked. I do enjoy a good Trump impression. That'll probably get me kicked off this entire platform, but it's, I don't know. I enjoy impersonating him. That was my motivation for the SMB. It's an 06 cabin chassis dump. Never going to tune it, but it did rebuild the turbo with the KC. Extreme rebuild with template. Dude, sounds like a pretty awesome cabin chassis truck, man. Joe, you ordered the Alliant. Yeah, Alliant. I like Alliant stuff. I think I've run Alliant replacement injectors back when I had a factory size injector. I think I have their exhaust back pressure sensor. Alliant is my go-to. If I can't get a Ford sensor that I trust, I will turn around and grab Alliant to help me kind of get through whatever I'm doing. So definitely a fine pick there. Those of you guys that are just joining us, don't forget to hit that like button. It does help the video out a lot, kind of perform better. We're really trying to grow the channel again, so don't forget to hit the like button and get in this live chat and ask some questions, guys. That's really the most fun that I have here. I'm going to go back through some of these questions and look up maybe something I can talk a little more about that's kind of different on some of this. Well, I guess we'll go back to Smoke here. He talked about what are some of the differences in the 04 and 04.5, because there are more than just what we talked about. The routing of the fuel lines coming up to the housing. So the regulator that bolts onto the front of the fuel filter is different, along with the lines coming off it. So the feed and return lines are a little bit different, and they get routed a little different in the actual engine bay as well. Um, the intake manifold we talked about, the earlier style, has a cross member on the intake manifold that comes across the back. And then we get into the turbo. The turbo has changed a lot of times over the years on a 6 liter. So the original one is actually the largest from factory. It came with that 10 blade, which has the really loud whistle. The '03 VGT vanes inside are shaped differently and have a more aggressive whistle as well. It came with the 59 millimeter compressor wheel at the inducer, whereas they went smaller in '05. The '05 and newer turbos are actually the smallest. They measure like, I think it's 56 point something. It's about 57 millimeters at the inducer. They went to a smaller 13 blade turbine wheel as well. Whereas when they went '04 to '04 and a half, it just went to a 13 blade and they weren't as tall. But the diameter of the actual turbine wheel was the same as the earlier style. So a lot of different changes happened in those in the turbo itself in the 6 liter over its entire life. I can't remember if vans had the same turbo as the trucks did. Cabin chassis. I want to say the cabin chassis was different, but I'm not 100% sure either. Thinking about keeping my old Ficum, possibly send it in, but then again, this one lasted 20 years. What's the chance I need it again? Hey, there's nothing wrong with having something around to help diagnose something. Stranger things have happened than somebody losing another Ficum, which here in the near future, I'm going to do a big video about regrounding my truck, adding a crossover cable from the batteries. We got a 4-aught cable to connect both batteries to. We have zero gauge for all of my grounds I'm going to rerun, along with a power wire from my alternator over to the passenger side battery that'll be fused and linked up to the battery. So, because that's one of the biggest reasons for Ficum failures across the board, mainly on the power side. I'm not sure that they really affect the logic side. There's a couple other grounds. There's a guy on YouTube named Too Many Toys, I think is his name, or channel name. He has some of the most thorough videos about grounding the 6 liter because their alternator output can be kind of trash. So he was looking to kind of basically improve that, and he goes over so many things with the grounds. I'm going to reground where my Ficum and PCM mount up as well. So there's just a lot of really good information on his channel. I'm going to try to kind of recap some of it and kind of go over what the kit I am. I'm going to have measurements for each length of cable I'm using. Not most of it's going to be or zero gauge, excuse me. But there will be some. I might do some 8 gauge. I have some 8 gauge tinned copper lines lying around that are extra that'll be good for some of these grounding things. So it'll be a big video that I do, but it is something that pretty much every 6-liter owner should be kind of looking at doing for their truck as a whole. And again, we're going to have all the measurements, links to everything, so you can just go in and buy the exact stuff I'm using, the crimping tool, the shrink wrap, everything. It'll be very professionally done as far as how to reground your 6-liter, because again, these are getting older. We're going to clean up all the factory grounds as well. We're going to put grease in there to keep everything nice and clean and protected. So some stuff there coming that definitely I think a lot of us should be looking at doing on these older trucks. And again, while we wait for another question, one thing to do. Oh, Joe, one thing to consider is tuning your Ficum. Ficum tune can really help go a long way in cleaning up the performance of your injectors. from less smoke, better, a little bit better fuel economy, helping spool the turbo faster, just a better driving experience. And it doesn't take a ton to really make that happen. I believe, if I remember it, no, I'm thinking of somebody else. I don't know if you're ready for, like, I don't know if you're running tunes or anything like that, but a FICM tune will not override your PCM tuning. They're different. They can work together really well if you go with like the economy tune or a 40 horsepower tune, and coupled with PCM tuning, that works really, really nice together. That is something we're looking at messing with this winter as well. Joe, it's not. Some people don't like mixing them, and I'll say this: Blessed Performance does. They do their own FICM tuning as well, but a lot of people will tune a FICM along with the PCM. What isn't good is to run like these really high horsepower FICM tunes along with a high horsepower truck tune. You want to run one of the lower FICM tunes along with your PCM tuning. So you can do it now. I mean, last conversation I had with Blessed, he was still on board with it, and a lot of people are. But they do custom FICM tuning. It looks like right here it's about $100 for custom FICM tuning. I'm looking at it right now. So they can tune your FICM with HP tuners. I didn't know that. That's kind of neat because that wasn't always the go-to tuner for FICMs. It used to be old Edge devices is what people used to tune their FICMs with. So that's kind of a cool difference. I'll have to talk to him more about that and see, what all is going on with that. But like I said, I will be doing it in the near future. We'll be kind of reviewing it as well. They keep adding stuff on his website. I can't keep up with it all. But last time I checked, like I said, they do recommend it. I'm running 205/30s, so I will definitely be checking that out more this year, and I'm excited. I hope it helps clean them up a little bit. Diesel Truck Nationals. I think the truck will be ready to race this year, Steve. I think we can officially race the 6-liter. What do you want to? Well, I say hopefully you have a 6-liter converted Ram, and we can go 6-liter versus 6-liter. But assuming that is going to be a massive project, I think you should race your Platy. I'll race the 6-liter, and we'll see. We'll have some fun. I still have a picture. I was actually looking at that the other day. I saw it. I should post that soon about the find me a donor or the 6.7's running. We'll run the 6.7 because I have a feeling it's going to be hard to find the donor for that. Man, Blessed, he does keep expanding his website. I'm just trying to find out his FICM tuning stuff. Bully Dog, Super Chill. Oh, he's got them all. I'm just looking to see if he offers any other. He used to have I thought he used to sell the PHP tuner as well. They do have the shift on the fly switch. that him and In the Shop produced. I don't know if anyone's familiar with him, but he's another guy that did a YouTube channel that was a mechanic background. He also has a 100 psi factory replacement for the map sensor, and it helps. He tells how to change the parameters on the SCT for your tuner to actually fit it in for everything. Is there any way to know if standpipes and dummy plugs have been done without pulling valve covers? Lucas, no. They're really, in that regard, there's, unless somebody has told you, hey, I did this, you have to pull them out. And I always tell people, if you're going to go as far as pulling them out, you might as well look at getting a new set. This has been a pretty big topic lately for people. Welded standpipes. There's companies making welded standpipes that are, take away one of the potential leaking part of that. So Diesel Site is one of them. I believe Blessed Performance also sells. Oh wait, does Diesel Site? Update design, double the number of O-rings on the inside. So Diesel Site has an updated design with an extra O-ring. That's what I'm confused on. Somebody was making welded ones at one point because they're two-piece. I would not settle for something super cheap on this, just because if you do, you're probably going to have a failure. Diesel Site's been a good name. They're probably one of the people I'd go with. The Ford ones are also fine as well, to be honest. So one of those two is where I would definitely go, and that's going to help keep you on the road, not having those hot nose starts suck. I had one once, which is rare on an early truck, but it's because I actually lifted up the cover to the high pressure oil pump to pull my IPR valve out. And I caused a leak that I didn't realize. I thought my pump just died, which later I do believe happened. So I replaced the pump, and it's been fine ever since with a, oh shoot, I can't think of his name. 6.0. CNC Fab, that's who I'm looking for. Which they are not one of the first couple ones to come up. But CNC Fab is who I used for I used their stage 1 pump. It's been a great pump. It's been holding strong. I might upgrade to their stage 2 in the future because I have big enough injectors. I could probably use a higher output pump, but overall it's been doing fine as of now. Okay, thanks. What are the issues they cause if they start failing? 67,000 miles, but trying to prevent any future issues. Going through everything. Exhaust manifolds, up pipes, turbo rebuild. You've already done the snap to connect. So typically what happens is it starts with a longer hot crank or even a long cold crank on those trucks. And what I would basically do is I'd keep an eye on your ICP and IPR. I would keep a close eye on those and kind of look to see what they're doing. And what you're looking for actually is when you're at hot idle, what is your IPR should be like around 24-ish. When trucks at operating temp, you should, so like 190, 185, 190 degrees oil and coolant temp, your IPR should be about 24. This should be in the 550, 600 PSI range for your ICP as well. I forget the voltage reading for that, but I'd look up both and I'd validate both of those on there. If you notice that maybe your truck is still at that 500 to 600 PSI at hot idle, but your IPR is like 29, 30, that might be a sign that you have a high pressure oil leak somewhere that's starting to become an issue. That would be something. Part of why it happens when it's hot too is oil is thinner. So if there's a leak, it's getting through a little bit better as well. So I would keep a close eye on that. I'd find out what your truck's running right now. The other thing to be, if you're doing a pull and you start noticing you're having a hard time maintaining full ICP, and your truck's pegged at 85% IPR, but it's not able to maintain it, especially if you don't have, since you have a factory truck with factory turbo, like you should be fine holding your ICP. But, and I forget what factory spikes at, but like if you were to put a tune in or something, you know, you can get 4,000 psi of pressure out of that system in factory form. But if you couldn't maintain that, that would be a potential sign that you have the start to a leak. So keeping a close eye on it is going to be your best sign, because they're not necessarily always just a fast, oh, my truck stalled out, because they can eventually get bad enough your truck will stall out. So I would check kind of the health of it now, see what it's doing. And if you're, again, at hot idle and it's, you know, your IPR is about 24, 25, even 26, I wouldn't really sweat. And your ICP is in that 550 range, give or take, then I think you're probably fine to hold off for now, but I would keep a close eye on it. You're very low miles for the age of these trucks now, but I would probably consider going in and validating that this has been done. So they kind of went with a like reinforced part for the O-ring. I believe they also have gone to thicker O-rings to help kind of protect them and make them a little more durable. But that's kind of how that would happen in that. What year's your truck, Lucas? Ryan, what's up, man? Welcome to the live stream. You're having problem with your 07, did injector, standpipes, dummy plugs, and high pressure oil pump. New FICM, new PCM, runs for 10 seconds, then dies, won't start back up. IPR 84% while cranking. Once it fires up, it goes to 43 and jumps to 84, then dies. Any thought? I highly doubt your high pressure oil pump failed. It could have. It's very, very rare in later trucks. So let me think for a second here. Did you? I believe new high pressure oil pumps for the later style come with a new snap to connect fitting. But I would get my hands on a like 150 psi air compressor, and I would you can buy test kits off Amazon that lets you push air through it. I would, hydrolocked and filled pan with 2 gallons of diesel. Did it in how? That's unplug your ICP sensor. Or wait, did you say ICP sensor? So I would at first unplug your ICP sensor and see what it does. So if you have it's rare, it's not super common to lose ICPs in that year truck, but it can happen. So if an ICP sensor is faulty and you unplug it, the truck will go to a deferred value, and it will not go with hold on here, what I'm trying to think. It'll bypass that. So it'll essentially guess very accurately, but guess what your ICP reading actually is, whereas it can cause no start issues, where it's getting weird readings and it can shut your truck off. So before you pull anything, unplugging your ICP sensor and leaving it unplugged is a good way to determine if you have a bad one. And typically with no starts, this is the first thing I actually go check with. Especially if I'm not getting proper ICP. Do you know when you're cranking the truck, do you know what your ICP is reading? Does the same with ICP out, tried 3 different ICP sensors. But have you unplugged the ICP sensor and just left it unplugged? And do you know what your ICP reading is when this is going on? Like when you're trying to crank it, what's it actually reading? I'm gonna get you a video that I think you'll benefit from. So, in something like this, IPR going there, that seems really goofy. But I would take this kind of back to basics and validate all my information. I do a video kind of on this topic here, talking about no start conditions, where I don't go into all the detail, but I do go into a fair amount of detail. This is another one of those videos that I'm going to kind of expand on. This, before you click on this and start watching this video, I plan to expand on this further, but typically with no starts on 6 liters, because if it's going to 500, even if it's slow, it should be able to, once it starts, kind of stay there. I'm wondering if you don't have a different issue. So you want to make sure you have FICM sync, cam sync. You want to make sure that your FICM is at least at 47 or greater volts. Anything less than that, and your FICM's on its way out. At least the power supply to it is. You want to make sure your batteries are supplying enough and that they're not dying. The fact that it's like, I don't know if your batteries have kind of taken a beating from trying to start the truck, if they're spinning kind of slow, and that's why you're raising ICP slowly on that truck. But I would also validate that. Typically, even with a leak, once the truck starts, it'll stay running. So I'm wondering if there isn't a different issue. Now, if the pickup tube, like you referenced, is blocked, then that could be an issue. The only other thing I'm wondering about your low pressure oil pump. They're not very common failures on these, unless you're running like an upgraded fluid dampener, in which case then you need one of the billet low pressure oil pump gears to kind of survive. But that's where I would start. I would kind of go back to basics, not necessarily assume that it's the oil, the high pressure oil system, and maybe just validate some of these other things before, because it sounds like you've done a lot of what I would recommend doing for someone in your shoes. I'd start looking somewhere else to kind of double check that. And I would keep those up. Like if you get it started, I'd keep like, cam sync, FICM sync, all those things up, because if they're not synced, your truck won't run. It'll just stall out. So I would start looking a couple other places before returning to a really kind of coming down on the high pressure oil system again, because it does sound like you've pressure tested it and kind of gone through everything. This all happened after I did an oil change and it completely ran out of fuel. But the truck was resealed with window sealer. I don't know what window, like regular silicone, like that you put around your windows. Ford does have a sealer that people use on it. Ryan, that's the other thing. Check fuel pressure. I didn't think of that. I do believe I referenced that in the video. But I think you've replaced the whole high pressure oil system. So I think at this point you might want to take a step back and look at some other things first before really coming back and saying it's this. And I would look at hooking up a manual gauge to the test port on the fuel filter housing in the engine bay, and just kind of don't run that line into the cab in case it leaks. You don't want a bunch of diesel fuel, but a lot of people like tape it to the windshield while they do a drive. Um, Now that could be it as well. I would validate and make sure like the fuel pump didn't take any damage while that happened. They're pretty robust units, and that's not a common issue for them to die, but I would just check it. They can get bad. Um, I mean, I guess at that point you'd have to pull the pan to see if maybe something came out of there. How did you get so much diesel in your oil? Like, did you have an injector just dumping fuel like that was leaking, or I'm not quite sure how you got that much diesel in there. Lucas, thanks a ton for the info. My truck's an '06 bone stock, mainly pretty much well. Obviously, I had a lot. uh, a 6 liter sitting for any modern diesel sitting for a long time is not good. But the 6 liter, the biggest issue that happens is the turbo can get corrosion in like the VGT system, and that can kind of cause issues down the road. But I believe if I remember right, you said you cleaned it and rebuilt yours already, so you're good there. Lucas, I'm familiar. Lucas, what part of the Northeast are you in? I'm in Pennsylvania. Every time I see a mechanic video from down south talking about how easy working on something is, I would like to see them come up here and deal with some of the crap we deal with on some of these older trucks. Now, I'm a big believer in put things back together nicer than you took them apart. And when you do that, you can have some really, really relatively nice tear downs of stuff. But man, when I see those guys like, oh yeah, nothing's ever rusted up here or down here, it's like, yeah, that must be nice. I will say this: I'm also meticulous about after snowstorms or if ever there's salt down. I go to the car. So I just went to the car wash the other day. We had a little bit of snow and there's a bunch of ice or salt put all around. So with the pressure washer at the car wash, I used their little soap and sprayed a bunch off, then did a high pressure rinse on everything as well, and literally get on the ground and spray under the truck, the axles, around the brakes. The frame gets a good one, the transmission, the DPF. Oh, in my 16, the DPF, otherwise just the exhaust in the older truck. Everything gets sprayed down really well. The whole body gets sprayed down well. Um, just make sure to get all that crap off, and that'll really go a long way in keeping your truck looking nice for a while. For those of us that live in salty areas, I'm probably not as bad as Maine in Pennsylvania. I know my friends in New York, if they get hammered with salt up there. Those of you guys just joining, don't forget to hit the like button while you're here hanging out with us and getting a live chat. It's open for you guys to ask questions and comment on. So don't be shy. After off-roading, undercarriage gets sprayed down. Greg, yep, that's the way to do it. I saw one of those things that hooks up to your home garden hose and you can drive back and forth to clean underneath your truck. I have a feeling I'm buying one of those in the near future, because I just think you need to get all that out from under there. And any way I can make that process easier for myself, I'm all about. Now, hopefully it actually comes out with some force to make that worthwhile for me. But you need to definitely get under there and get all the crap out. Got a question here. 06, 114,000 miles. Nice and fairly low, man. Have a feeling your turbo's going out. Got a squeal, cold start. Excuse me, guys. When you say squeal, I don't think it's your turbo. That sounds more like a exhaust leak. Like it could be your Y pipe. It could be the connection from your exhaust manifold to the Y pipe. It could be the bellows in the Y pipe. I feel like I'm saying Y pipe a lot. Those would be, that's what I'm thinking. I could be wrong, but I think that is a likely chance that what's actually happening to yours. At least when I think, excuse me while I think about the proper words to use here. At least when I think about a squealing noise. Like, because typically all the unison ring is going to do is give you like a varying degree of whistle. You know, if you don't have like if it's not opening and letting those veins open up, you'll get more whistle, because we get the whistle when the veins are closed more. A squealing sound, so Justin, what I would do first is I would get a flashlight. I'd crawl under the truck. I'd look at your firewall by your Y pipe and look for any soot on it. I would then look at where the Y pipe connects to the exhaust manifolds. Again, I'd look for soot on each side. I would check the exhaust manifolds to the block. And again, you're looking for that soot. As things expand and contract, if you have it on a cold start and then that squeal kind of goes away, I wonder if the metal isn't expanding, sealing something off a little bit to create that, to stop that and change your turbo back to normal, or at least a normal-ish sound. I can't say I've ever heard a turbo squealing cause, or I can't say I've ever heard about a failing turbo squeal. It's like 2 seconds. I would be really shocked to see it be your turbo. What I would do is I'd probably pull up Torque Pro or some kind of app that lets me verify readings on it, and I would just look at my VGT duty cycle and see what that's doing. I'm just trying to think for a second. I don't think you have a failing turbo issue. That would be a weird one to have. And I would say that would be more likely a bearing issue than a VGT, than the unison ring itself. You could always pull it and try to clean your unison ring and the exhaust housing a little bit and see if that helps. You could clean up your turbo vanes as well a little bit, just with like a 90-degree die grinder or something like that. Nothing crazy. Don't go too nuts. And that'll at least let you know if you have like pitting in the exhaust housing, if something's getting stuck. But I don't know that I've ever heard of a squeal from a turbo be like a failure. Typically, when you get a squeal in that region, it is typically related to some kind of exhaust leak. I could be wrong. Lord knows that it would not be the first time. But that's what I would double check with that. I'd probably pull the turbo and give it a good look. I wonder why they had it cleaned twice. Normally they start to kind of wear out, but even that doesn't cause a squeal. No harm in going in again and checking it unless it was just done recently, but I feel pretty confident in the statement of it's not a turbo failure. Again, I could be wrong. It's really hard for me to tell without, which you could pull the intake off and look for in and out play. So grab the center hub of your compressor wheel and push in and pull out on it. You shouldn't have any play there. I guess technically, if you had play there, and especially until like the bearings in there really filled up good with oil, Because what happens is the oil pressure in those bearings actually keeps your wheel floating. So a lot of people want to check up and down play on the turbo shaft. That's not how you actually check. You're looking for in and out. Up and down play, because the bearings aren't filled with that oil that kind of floats the compressor wheel as it's spinning. So that's a bad metric. There is a degree, there'll be a degree. You can take a brand new turbo from any company. There'll be up and down play on the shaft. In and out should always be zero play. If you have in and out play, then you do have a failure in your turbo. Potentially something that is salvageable, but I can't state for sure at that point. That would need somebody that actually rebuilds turbos to kind of determine if it is an appropriate turbo for a rebuild or not. I'm not sure what the internal measurements are supposed to be to really say for sure on that front. But that's what I would do to try to kind of tell that. Lucas, the manifolds were so rotten that there were no bolt holes left to bolt butt pipes to. Wow, that's bad. 6 leaks between the manifolds and up pipe connections and bellows. That's brutal, Lucas. I haven't seen one that bad. My brother had a Y pipe fail. And it sounded like a very upset tea kettle going off. It was one of the loudest things I think I've ever heard. Greg, I got a squeal after my high pressure oil system was worked on, got new up pipes, thinking that might be the issue. Not so much. Mechanic told me they couldn't figure it out and said, come pick it up. Greg, that would be the last time I went to that mechanic. Ever. That would seriously upset me. But that's what unfortunately, that's a lot of what people deal with today is crap like that. There's some really good mechanics out there, but there's some really bad ones. I want to say it is the Y pipe, though, because your high pressure oil system isn't going to cause a noise like that. So I would definitely go double check. Typically where people mess that up is they mess up because if they worked on your high pressure oil system, they pulled the turbo out. And I would bet money they don't have that Y pipe connected correctly. And here's the secret to it. Driver side manifold, loosen one of the bolts from the Y pipe to the manifold. Climb back up on top. Literally with one hand, pull your Y pipe to the turbo, and then hand tighten the V-band clamp. Those V-band clamps hold it in place. They're not meant to pull them in place. So essentially when you tighten them, they're just going to hold wherever that connection is, right where it's at. It's not going to push it onto the turbo like a lot of people think. So just loosen that one bolt, and then from there you can move it up. That is one thing that's nice about BD Y pipes is I can loosen the Y pipe to the collector at the top without having to get down and undo the one side. So I can just give a little loose in there. It's enough for me to pull the Y pipe into place, tighten it back up, and done. I've had so many conversations with people that have this issue, and it's always frustrating to see how some people just don't address this correctly. Like I said, there's good, like I didn't create most of these tricks. I learned them from other people over the years, or other people that had a lot more time with these engines than myself. Some of it through just trial and error and constantly messing around and getting frustrated. I learned it, but that's a crappy problem. That would be my bet, Greg. The truck's not here for me to, if it was here for me to go look at, I could honestly, give you a better idea and probably even fix it. But my money would definitely be on the Y pipe there. I do think the 6-liter takes a certain kind, and some of it is I think people they're so afraid of it because they've heard horror stories. It is not something like if you're not a good mechanic, it's certainly not going to be an engine you're going to want to mess with, because it does take a little bit, in my opinion, a higher understanding of how the truck works. It's not complicated. You just need to spend some time understanding how the truck is supposed to actually go together and come apart. Justin, this is your first diesel. What's the first thing you would do to it? The absolute first thing I would do to this diesel is I would get some kind of monitoring solution. So for 6 liters, I think the best you can get for a 6-liter is the Edge CTS platform. Gonna get you a link here because you can expand this really easily. It works well with the truck. Here we go. So with this, I have a video of me adding, excuse me again. I have a video of me adding a boost gauge. We're going to do a fuel gauge on this as well. There's a couple other things we're gonna do an exhaust back pressure sensor setup. I'm gonna mess with just a whole bunch of stuff, and it's just a nice kit that expands very well with the truck. That would be my number one thing. I'd be, again, that's an affiliate link I dropped, but that'll help you with a lot of information to need to know and a lot of things. I'd add a exhaust probe to it as well. From there, it really depends, like, what are your goals? The 6-liter in factory form is a good truck. It'll tow really well. It makes its power a little higher. Like, some people liked the 7.3 because it made power a little lower in the RPM. Whereas a 6-liter does make it a little higher. It likes to hover around like 2,000 RPM to 2,200. It's kind of a nice spot for towing with it. But Justin, I guess outside of that monitor, what do you use your truck for? And I can kind of help guide you a little bit better that way. Overkill, what's up, man? Welcome to the live stream. What are the odds? Literally trying to figure out why your Edge Insight is glitching. What is it? What's your Edge Insight doing specifically? The first thing I would do is I'd upgrade it. I'd update its firmware. I'd come hook it up to your computer, go to Edge's website, make sure it has the most up-to-date firmware on it. Did it just one day start glitching and being goofy on you, man? While I wait for your response, I'm just gonna hop about that hour and a half mark. My throat starts hurting. We're still not quite in our peak live streaming shape, but we're getting back there a little bit. Slow and steady. Yeah, I had somebody else install it. I'm figuring out now the screen is not turning on. It needed an update. Oh. Well, hopefully that's it and it rocks and it works well. I love the Edge CTS monitor. I don't use their tuner. But the Edge Insight is just a great setup, honestly. I really do. It's my go-to. That's all I can really say is it's my go-to. I use it for just about. I'll probably try Banks. iDash for my 6.7. And that's really just because it's different. It's not because I don't think it's better. I think it's different, and I think it'll be kind of cool to compare and contrast them. That said, if I found a good deal on a if I found a good deal on a CTS, I would go get a CTS instead. Nothing against the Banks kit, don't get me wrong. I do like the Banks kit. It's cool, but it's certainly the CTS is also amazing. Looking at pin 16. Gil Banks swears he's way better than Edge. Have you seen his videos? Overkill. We'll get into that in a second. I'm going to quick answer Justin's question here. So the 80 horsepower Fickum tune is a good tune overall. It is not the Fickum tune I recommend people run. I recommend people either run a like a 40 or even their economy tune, because what I'm really looking for from a Fickum tune is to kind of clean things up, fine tune the programming. I look for the big horsepower gains to come from the PCM. And it's not like if you combine your 80 horsepower Fickum tune with an 80 horsepower PCM tune, it doesn't give you 160 horsepower. There's compromise. There's some overlap with PCM tuning and the Fickum tuning. But I think about Fickum tuning in a way of like cleaning up the whole injection process and fine tuning the injectors to run really efficiently, even in the higher horsepower applications. So I am not a big fan per se of the 80, but I'm a big fan of the 40. I will say this: I don't think 80 is bad either. If you start towing, you want to keep an eye on your exhaust temps. Again, with the Edge CTS, you can add a EGT probe very easily. But I don't. I would just be a little cautious with an 80. My preference would be a 40 or again the Eco tunes, and you'll still get better cold starts as well. So you don't have to worry about that. If it's possible, if you can, I'd see if you can't still change that out for a 40. And if you want more horsepower from that, if you want more horsepower than the 40, I would do it through PCM tuning with an SCT and custom tunes from somebody, which Bless Performance does sponsor the channel. 6 Obros for 10% off your custom tunes from those guys. That is an affiliate code, but again, you still get 10% off, so that's pretty neat as well. We'll be reviewing his tunes here too as well. I've been saying that for a bit, but I'm having a PCM issue on my 6-liter that we're kind of getting resolved right now. So we'll see how, once that's back, then we'll get on that. But yeah, if you can, I would definitely switch to that 40. Oh, overkill. Your cigarette lighter probably doesn't work either. I bet it is. Hold on, I can find it for you. 6.0 Powerstroke OBD2, no power. Fuse 12 in under the dash. That's what I believe. I think you have a bad fuse. This happened to my brother's truck once. He had a bad fuse. Thought something was wrong. Changed the fuse. And that was it. Oh, overkill. Is yours not in a Super Duty? Again, that's what I know that's happened before. What is yours not getting power to in yours? Oh, it's in a Jeep. Jeeps can be painful sometimes. Well, in that case, my friend, I am not able to help you. I'm sorry. um, oh, Justin, you got to ask the question. Uh, so we're going to talk a little bit about this. I don't like talking about deletes on the channel, and that's really just because I don't want to have anyone come after me. Here is what I will say about EGR delete kits. After everybody kind of went after them, there really aren't good EGR delete kits out there. There's some cheap ones you can still get through various sources. I do not stay up to date on it because I don't really comment much about it. Again, really due to EPA regulations. I would love under this administration, I try not to talk politics too much. I would love if under the incoming administration, I'm looking for defense on off-road diesel sports. I would love if that happened. It would open things up so much. You could get better tuning, tuning that people aren't afraid to tune to improve what they put on trucks for the street and get more efficient, cleaner, better functioning tunes in that regard as well. So, like I said, we won't get too far into it. On the 6-liter, it's the EGR also isn't holding back power. It makes your intake manifold dirty. That's the worst part about it, unfortunately. But yeah, I wouldn't hypothetically say it was legal or say there was defense for off-road sports. I wouldn't be buying one of those kits because they are garbage. So I think something in regard to, again, if there weren't legal repercussions for it, I would not be buying those kits. I'd probably find an alternative means to get the job done. What I will say this is, if you're leaving that intact, I would get a good EGR cooler. I don't recommend many bulletproof diesel parts. This is one that I do. Their EGR coolers aren't very nice. Definitely cleaning the EGR valve itself, making sure that that's not dirty in there, is definitely a good thing as well to keep the truck running nicely. But again, hopefully we get some change and get a defense of off-road sports. That would be really awesome. There aren't there isn't support for off-road. The Chevron thing, that didn't really turn out to be what people think, because there are parameters in CARB that allow the EPA to enforce. So realistically, to change, we need things would have to majorly change in order to address that in its current format, which is upsetting. We'll see what happens over the next couple years. Do you know about the Chevron? Yeah, the Chevron deference, I believe it was called. That was in my opinion, that was a win. Again, I try not to talk too much politics here. That was a major step in the right direction. There are still major hurdles to overcome to actually get us where we need to be, that off-road diesel sports are protected. SEMA is a big driver of a lot of this. They have a lot out there trying to help, but we're not quite where we need to be. I got low boost code when I put a welded shut EGR cooler in my 03. Had to swap it out to pass California smog. Yeah, California smog. I wonder why you got a low boost code, though. That sounds like there was a leak somewhere. A low boost code is typically caused to two things: either a turbo that is stuck in the open position in the VGT where the vanes aren't closing enough to really help build boost up to get up there, or some kind of exhaust leak preventing it as well. I mean, I guess there's other ways, but those are probably the two most common that I can think of off the top of my head. So cold air intakes, big topic. Shouldn't be a big topic, big topic. First, we're going to try to define cold air intakes for a second, because it's not cut and dry, especially recently. Banks has, speaking of Banks, I didn't forget your question now that I bring him up. I think Banks makes a lot of really nice stuff. I do not think they are the end all be all to everything the way he advertises it. He is a great marketer. And some of how he does that is he says some stuff that upsets some other people, and then he lets them do the marketing for them at that point. They make really nice stuff, high quality. One area I disagree. One area that I really, really disagree with Banks on is in these hot air intakes, which means there's nothing. It's just an open filter element. He has gotten really vocal about this in the last several years, about how he's making a cold air intake. Everyone's making hot air intakes, and he talks some really scientific stuff, and he's not wrong. I don't think what he's saying is wrong. Here's where I disagree. There does become a point where you just need more flow. And on a 6 liter, you are getting fresh air right to that filter through your grill. You can even open it up. It's called a Zoodad mod. This is something I'd like to do this next summer. But basically, where the filter is like getting air from the front, there's a spot that you can open up to get help drive more fresh air into the intake, which is beneficial. But when you get into big turbos, big injectors, you need a bigger filter, period. Those other smaller ones, they're not drawing enough air in. I don't care if it's a little bit cooler, which, again, that's your benefit. How can I get as much cool air into my truck as possible? But there is a point where you just need air. If you don't have enough air, it doesn't matter if it's cool air, if you need more of it. So I do disagree with him there a little bit. For a factory truck, like if you're not going to go bigger injectors, bigger turbo, then the factory intake is actually quite sufficient. It's great at filtering. That being said, I still don't like it. I'm still probably going to put something on there, whether for 6 liters, AFE would probably be my go-to right now. I like SMB, but they've made theirs so small that I actually think it takes less air than factory. And if you can't have that super clean plastic part over top, what's the point of having it? There's some other kits out there, but and if I was looking at upgrading, like the No Limit with that open filter, I think that thing looks awesome. That'd probably be the route I would go. It's not going to give you any significant increase in horsepower, fuel economy, anything like that. They look nice under the hood is pretty much it. Insufficient flow code. Okay, that makes sense. Yep, that'll happen in that situation, Greg. Yeah, the stock filter is great at exactly that, filtering. Ignore anybody that starts saying, oh, it's good. I've heard numbers as high as 800-900 horsepower that the factory intake will support. That's not accurate. I'm not saying nobody has gotten that high, especially if they were spraying, using a little bit of the funny spray to get up there. However, if they would have put a no limit intake on with that massive filter, they definitely would have seen more horsepower. The factory intake is good for a relatively factory setup. And I use injectors and turbos as a way to define factory in that specific regard. Because if you lose those things, then that's going to cause you your issues. But I would not worry too much in regards to that. Again, Justin, it sounds like your goal is not to have like a crazy truck. It sounds like you're just looking for a good running truck. The factory intake, keeping a clean filter, you know, the factory intake, you can change that once a year and you're fine. That's plenty. Um, if you go to one of the other ones like S&B, AFE, uh, I like to clean my filter every other oil change in those setups. So that's kind of what I do with those. I have an older S&B intake that's going to be coming out of my truck soon, and and it's a fine intake. Don't get me wrong. I'm running a big turbo. I'm running a big set of injectors. I need a little more. I need a bigger filter to kind of cope with what they're doing. Question: looking to lower my EGT's towing heavy 07 350. Can explain my current setup. Thinking about upgrading intake manifold to O-Dog. I hear I can lower 150. Jay, so a couple questions here for you, man. One, I tow about 13,000 pounds with my 6 liter, or I should say I did. So I know about towing relatively heavy with it, and I've done it with modified trucks as well. One of my favorite setups had 175 stock nozzle injectors on it. So what you'll find when you're looking to increase this is it's going to be a bunch of little upgrades that'll equal an overall decent chunk. One of the hardest things you're battling, and I mean, I'm assuming, Jake, before I even continue, because I don't want to waste your time, is your truck pretty stock, or do you have modifications? Are you running tuning? And what are your EGTs, like what are your EGTs actually hitting while towing right now? So any mod from lift and tires changes, if there's gear ratio changes, tuning, all that stuff. If you could drop that in a comment, that'll really help me expand. I'm going to answer these next two questions, and if you haven't answered by then, I'll kind of start going into some situations. Cold air comes from intercooler. By the time it's through the compressor, it's hot no matter what. That's true. A lot of people don't realize compressed air is hot air. That's actually the whole premise of a diesel engine, is compressing air to heat it up, thus equaling combustion. So going through the turbo, it will heat up a lot. There can be differences. I did a test on my 6.7 where I changed from the factory intake to an open element. The change was 1 degree. It was one singular degree change. So I will take added flow and I will sacrifice a 1 degree change. On the 6 liter, I think it's probably less with a Zoodad mod or something similar. I do plan to test that in the future. I just haven't gotten to it. And I want to test it in the summer because I want to test it in a situation where it's actually something I can validate a change and not just say, oh, look at this. So I'm looking for a hot day and we're going to test that out. And that will not be fun for me because it's going to be roasting. Justin, I would consider it. I would definitely consider selling my S&B after I change things out. I have to think if it's worth it for you because I don't know where do you live, Justin? Because it would probably it'd probably cost a penny to actually like Texas. It would probably be too expensive to ship. That I was hoping like if you're going to be in Maryland, it'd be like, well, we can probably meet up somewhere. When I'm ready, we'll talk about that a little bit more. If I don't have a local solution here, I'm doing a build on a local guy's truck. If he buys this one truck, which I'll video the whole thing. It might go to him, but you might like my alternative that I'm doing is I have a cheap intake tube that I'm going to put an AFE filter on. I have this all, and we're going to kind of test how well that works. And that's like a total of like $150 that I'm in that whole project. So that's not bad. Stock setup, new O-ringed heads, ARP, KC stage 1 Jetfire, stock injectors. Jay, do you have the KC stage 1 with a 10 blade exhaust side, or do you still have the 13? I kind of disagree. KC, I think they changed this. Let me look it up right now so I know, so I'm actually making sure I'm saying the correct thing. Okay, they made this a... That is wild they charged for that. I got to be honest, their stage 1 turbo is way too expensive. $1840 for a stage 1 with a 13 blade. If you go to a 10 blade, it's $1940. Any of the 11 blade, the 9 blade, that's a dumb idea to have. Just in comparison, I got to look up my turbo sponsor here. Let's look at their stage 1. That comes the way I feel a stage 1 should be set up, no matter what. And that is with the 10 blade exhaust side, because that is actually overall the better performing turbo. So in contrast, their stage 1 is $1,500. That's before my 10% discount. So $1,495, and then with 6 O-birds, you get 10% off that price. And that just comes with the 10 blade. Okay. Well, Jay, I'm glad you didn't pay that, and I'm glad you have the 10 blade. So that is how I like that setup. So basically what we can say there is your turbo is spec'd perfectly for what I like. I hate that 13 blade. And this is the exact situation I hate it in. If you're going to push the truck to pull some of these grades, keep up. Like maybe you're not trying to stay at 55, 65 miles an hour, but maybe you'd like to be at 45. Hopefully you can hold more than that even so. But the 10 blade exhaust is, or the 10 blade turbine side is my preference. So excuse me. Again, so back to the thing. The best way to start trying to lower this is really looking for efficiency and airflow within the whole system. O-Dog intake is one of the best dollar for dollar upgrades you can do. I think a CSF 6028 intercooler, again, great upgrade for what you're getting out of it. I'm a big fan of BD exhaust manifolds. We're really getting into diminishing returns right now as well. I like their Y pipe as well. I think all of them are good. There's an argument to be had about some nicer flowing pipes, CAC tubes. SoCal Billet, No Limit, great options. Bless Performance, I believe, has their own now that's very similar. The whole Banks kit is an excellent choice. Honestly, they have larger tubes. There's some fitment stuff because they go to this larger tube, so it gets a little hard to kind of fit stuff in there. But overall, it is a upgrade. I don't get worried. I see Doug will kind of touch on his comment about the coolant and oil bypass filters. I don't think they're really a super. I don't think they're necessarily worth it. I don't think they're bad. I just don't think they're necessarily worth it. I would take a better intercooler setup. But I also think if you buy, like, again, No Limit or SoCal Billet intercooler pipes and a CSF 6028 intercooler, I think you'll be better off. Mishimoto also recently released a 6-liter intercooler that is reasonably priced, which is kind of weird. It's like $500. However, you can get a 6028 cheaper, and the 6028 is a proven intercooler. I run it, I abuse it. I will say this: I dislike Mishimoto intercooler pipes, so I would highly recommend against their intercooler pipes. But so here's their upgraded one for 520. It's a different core design. It still has cast end tanks, which are a nice upgrade for reliability. It's still thicker than the factory setup here. But I don't. The CSF 6028 is kind of what I recommend everyone to. The gentleman that I spoke to about doing a build on his truck, I'll probably run a Mishimoto to test it out there. Because I do think it'll be an upgrade over the factory. But the 6028 is really kind of my favorite personally. I'm looking at one thing here. Sorry. So that is what I would do. There is one other thing. I really like the exhaust pipe. I don't think this would benefit you. I shouldn't even. I like a 3.5-inch downpipe to a 4-inch out the back. It keeps the turbo spooled up a little faster, and it'll just kind of give an overall slightly better driving experience. But for your situation, I don't think that's going to really help. I will say this: what I experienced pulling grades, again, I'm a little bit lighter in my towing than you, and I don't have the exact like measurement to where the grades are that I've towed. But some of the bigger hills, and again, they're not prolonged, but what I have found with my truck is I will spike to about 1350 as the turbo spools back up and I'm trying to pull that grade. And then my temps settle about 1100. I will say this: 1250 to 1300 for even a couple minutes is not really a big deal for these trucks. Sure, it's not great, but it's not the end of the world. So if I was you, I would start this. O-Dog intake manifold, absolutely, that would be my go-to and my next upgrade. Well, Jay, I'm gonna actually answer your question right now. So great minds are on the same page. O-Dog intake, without a doubt, there's zero drawbacks to it. It is a overall better performing intake manifold. It helps balance out airflow front to rear while flowing more air. Intercooler and intercooler pipes would be my next one. Again, I don't think you could go wrong with either one. A CSF 6028 with SoCal billet intercooler pipes, or the Banks intake setup. Both of them are solid options. You'll like them. They will provide improvements. Along with a degree of durability with those products as well. When you don't have any plastic, obviously you're not going to be as likely to blow your intercooler apart or blow a cac tube off. There are I don't know if you replace the plastic cold side pipe or not, but that one can break on them. I would probably do O-Dog first, followed by the intercooler setup, definitely second. If you do the CSF 6028, you can kind of piece it together. You can do the intercooler first, and then you can buy your pipes different, because it is a lot of money. I mean, the O-Dog intake's expensive. The Banks and all of that stuff is also quite expensive. They're great stuff, and I think they're the best ones you'll see a difference in. Again, I would also recommend at some point looking at exhaust manifold upgrades. I think that would be very helpful as well. However, not a necessity. And definitely getting into the weeds of, I'm looking at 2550 degree drops as opposed to 100 to 200 degree drops as well. I will say this, when people are talking about those advertised drops in temps, it's hard to say in your situation. You have kind of an extreme use situation. Now you have a really squared away build. You have a nice setup, man, and it's probably the ideal for towing overall. And this is what I recommend. The only other thing I can say, if you want kind of a little more of a thorough kind of dive into this, check out my video on stage 1 tow builds. I did this recently, and it's a good video. I really liked how it came out. We're going to do another version of it later, but just understand that that's kind of more geared towards exactly what you're doing. So yeah, I'm that video. I hope starts to catch on, because I think there's good information, and that tow setup that I talk about in there is ideal for most people that are building their 6-liters. Jay, my pleasure, man. Thanks for stopping in. If you like the video, man, and haven't, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't. Doug, let me get back here and kind of look at some of your stuff. I kind of feel like I overlooked you for a second here. Some of the bank stuff is kind of funky in regards to other mods. Cactus bank. Yeah, the bank stuff. Realistically, the only one I can say about the intercooler and intercooler pipes, because they have the larger tubes, which I would love to test this out at some point, just because I do think it's cool. They have those larger. They go to 3.5 inch boost tubes, which can be a little bit of a tight fit in there with some stuff, but overall, I've heard a lot of really good stuff about them as well. Sorry. So it would be interesting to test that out. I have a no limit setup now. MBRP used to make a really nice hot side pipe for the 6-liter, and I really liked that for a long time. They stopped making it now. I wish they didn't, because again, I really like it. I don't know if you can even find it anymore. It was a nice piece, though. I will say that. That doesn't look like it. You used to still be able to find it like one place or another, but right now it does not look like it's around. No Limit gets my vote at this point. Or excuse me, SoCal Billet. No Limit and Blessed are my other. Those are my top 3 for those. Jay, and if you do these, I would love to get an update on just how that went in the future, if that's helpful. Oh, I say that's funny. Well, Jay, it's glad to have you around, brother. I love the guys when they come in and let me know that, like, I don't know, like, this can be a lot to do sometimes with this channel, and I really do like doing it. I've met some great people from subscribers. Some subscribers I've become friends with. Hammer Down Motorsports is someone I've become buddies with. Yeah, he's a super cool guy. It's just been a great experience. It is a lot, especially while I'm growing in my career of what actually pays my bills. So I love hearing from people that have been around for years and watching the channel and still engaging. That still watch even my new stuff that maybe isn't as appealing as some of the old stuff, because some of the old stuff they just liked more. But I really do appreciate you guys that have been hanging out for a long time and interacting and watching stuff as well. So I really do appreciate you. Excuse me, Doug, do you mean like just a smaller pipe that you want to run on the bank's intercooler? I have heard of guys actually doing that. Again, SoCal Billet, man, I really love their piece. Blessed Performance has a very similar piece. I'm sure you can find a coupler that goes from uh, what's the factory 3 inch to 3.5 inch. I'm sure you can find a coupler for that easily. I'm sure Vibrant has one. I stand by. I don't think it's worth it for the bypass filters. When you have a nice setup like the Banks is, the Banks would be a cool one to test at some point. I actually would love to do test on a couple of these. Like I'd love to do the Banks test, turn around, and then do like No Limit, SoCal Billet, and Blessed pipes because I do think I stand by those are the three best on the market right now, and test against the expensive Mishimoto, the cheap Mishimoto, the CSF 6028, some maybe one of like there's a couple all aluminum radiators that are budget out there. I think that'd be cool. Maybe even test the Sinister one, which I really hate the Sinister one because it is so expensive. I'm going to pull it up here now. Ugh. And I do think it's ugly. On sale right now for $2,360. And the other thing is it's basically a knockoff of like a Spearco back in the day. I don't know if Spearco's still around, but they used to have a lot of welded sheet and end tanks that people liked. So it would be interesting to see which one works the best. Yeah. I hear you on going. Excuse me, on wanting to keep the engine clean. One of my biggest projects is I want to go back and I want to really finish some of the projects that were started that never got like wrapped up completely on that truck. That's one of those things I'm working on doing slowly but surely. But also, the good news is those of you, I don't know how many of you guys were around for the last live stream, but we actually had a lot of issues with me losing the live stream. And then I was able to restart them. I didn't have to like start the stream over. I was able to refresh and come right back in. And we've had zero issues. So we've had a little over 2 hours now of just no issue at all in the live stream. So that is a great step, and I'm very happy about that because I was. Some of you guys may know. Sorry, it says I have 3. Okay. Some of you guys may know I built my computer, and it's a rather high-end computer. Little show here. Yeah, I have water-cooled. I have a water-cooled PC I built, and I bent all these pipes myself. I have 2 radiators in this. My graphics card down here is RTX 3090 with a dual water block on both sides. A water block for my CPU. 64 gigabytes of RAM. Now I gotta fix my camera after I have it all goofed up. A monster, and I was super irritated when I was getting kicked out last time. So glad this is all working now. I have a 1200 watt power supply, so I could power anything with this setup. Those of you guys that might know, I see Doug Sweetbox. It's an Intel 13900K in this, so it's a pretty rowdy PC. I actually love talking about this stuff too, but I was very irritated last time when I was getting kicked out of my live stream for some issue. I don't know if it was YouTube. YouTube made some changes I've seen here. Like they added this goal thing, which I haven't really looked at. Oh, add a super chat goal. That's a weird one. We will not be adding a super chat goal. You bought the bypass filter years ago and want to install it. That's fair. Steering box recommendations. Yours is sloppy. Front end has been rebuilt. Justin, your steering box is sloppy with the rest of ours. Redhead or Blue Top are probably the two most known. My understanding is Blue Top started from people that left Redhead, but they both seem to be pretty like top-notch stuff. What has become a little more popular is people actually swapping out to newer gearboxes. Like the gearbox in my 16 is super smooth. I've heard of people doing that, but I don't know much about it. For simplicity, Redhead or Blue Top would be my go-to. I think I would go for whoever has the best deal. You built your own, so you're running Linux, of course. Doug, I'm not running Linux. So I have not gotten into like the custom PC stuff. I built this predominantly to edit whatever I wanted to, because my goal was to get to 4K video, which I just bought I don't have it down here. I bought a GoPro 11 used the other day, but I got a good deal on it. So I could do 4K video and high bitrate stuff. So that is what this exists for, and I wanted everything to just play nice. Plus, YouTube can be a little finicky in the different internet browsers to begin with, so I didn't want to create any issues. At some point, I wouldn't mind messing with it, and I know there's a way to do like dual systems where you can launch one or the other, which I'd like to at some point mess with, but I have not really gotten into like the different platforms. And I also, for work, I don't do a lot of work from home, but I do a very small amount, and I didn't want any complications with it. So at some point, I've seen people adjust them. Is that worth trying to mesh the gears? Typically, when you try tightening up it's not typically worth trying to do. Yeah, some people tighten it up and claim it helps. You can only tighten it up a very small amount, and then what happens? Your steering wheel doesn't return to center. And dude, I got a good like 2 inches of play in my 6-liter. I mean, I plan to do a full front end rebuild, hopefully in the next year. Of it, and that includes the gearbox. That includes, I might do another lift on it. I might go to a 4-inch lift. It's at 2.5 now, so I might do a 4-inch. One, because it'd be cool, and two, it would clear my tires better. And I think it'd be funny trying to drag race a 4-inch lifted truck on 35s. I would like to switch over to stock size tires as well, and then do another pass and see how it does. Try Linux Mint on your old computer. I don't really have an old computer. I just built my mom a custom PC in a small box for her work computer. That's got an i9 12900K. Her GPU is not as crazy because it just needs to run off it. She has two nice monitors, 27-inch LGs, high refresh rate monitor, essentially gaming. Well, they are gaming monitors. They're Ultra Gears. But she only has a 1660 Ti in it, and that runs those monitors perfect. She's got a triple setup. At one point, when I buy a home and get a bigger desk and like an office space, I plan to actually run triples myself. I feel like I'm losing people because I'm starting to talk computers. Sorry, guys. Thank you those that are staying and hanging out through it. I do kind of nerd out on that stuff. Um, 6.7 gearbox. I have heard of people installing them. I just don't know enough about it at this time. I will do some research. Excuse me. I do believe if you have the '05 and newer suspensions, the 6.7 gearbox is a doable thing. I think the 6.7 gearbox in the '04s is a lot more work if you haven't converted your front axle to a newer one. Um, the other thing to consider is you start getting into maybe some, I think you might have to have some lines, custom like hydraulic lines made. But I will say this, dude, my 6.7 gearbox, like uh, steering gearbox is smooth as anything. Super nice to steer. Um, but I think also when people do that, they're refreshing everything. They're getting a new pump. They're getting a new, um, it's going to come to me here in a second, all new lines and stuff like that. So no lines have like failed internally. That'll help uh, things turn, the pump works better then. Uh, I will say it sucks on my 6 liter with 35 12.5 inch tires. And they've gotten heavy. So yeah, that's not fun. Guys, I will say we're probably going to enter like the last 4 or 5 minutes here. I mean, if the chat stays, if there's a bunch of questions, I will answer all of them. But just as a heads up, we're probably getting down to like winding down for the day. And I do want to thank everybody for coming. This has been a great live stream. We're trying to get back into this more. So stay tuned. We're going to do a lot more. I know you're a 6.0, bro. I'm really more of a Powerstroke bro as a whole. Doug, I really like. Doug, was that you in the very beginning we were talking, or was it? No, that was a different person. There was a gentleman in here, Juan, that had that was talking about IDI stuff. I don't know much about them. I think they're cool. I would love to mess with them one day, but I don't. I don't know much about them. However, at some point, I think it'd be cool to kind of goof around with them. But I don't really know much about them. I know a little bit. I know like the 6.9 IDI is the same engine block as the 7.3 IDI, and I don't think they changed the block even in the first version of the Powerstroke either, even though they started changing other things, which was what 93, 94, I think was the first Powerstroke designation that was made. Transmission shutter on hard throttle is that transmission or carrier bearing truck is not lifted. Justin, that could be a couple things. That shutter on Super Duties is common. You could have some issue in your carrier bearing that could be starting to go. I don't think it's transmission related. That's not normally it. Also, under hard throttle, the axle does start to kind of torque up, and that can be part of it as well. So I think that's likely probably your issue. It's quick. What's up, brother? It has been a while. Some of you guys may know this. He's an OG. He's been around a long time on the channel. Good to hear from you, man. Justin, but I think under hard throttle, like, I mean, again, it could be the carrier bearing that's probably not helping anything, but I think likely you're getting your axle's probably moving under that hard XL. Cow tracks are probably the easiest and most reasonably priced way to fix that. Other than that, any kind of traction bars, that's what I'm looking to say. I know if I do like a boosted launch and 2-wheel drive, I get a lot of axle hop. I believe normally it's axle wrap, I believe is what they call what you're experiencing, where the axle's shifting under that hard throttle and causing that shudder. So I would probably look at getting it's probably not a bad idea to look at having your drive shaft just rebuilt, popping in new U-joints, new carrier bearing, and rebalanced. I'm sure there's a place by me that does it, so that's where I go. But there's more than just a place. Most areas have some kind of shop. Uh, oh, um, it's a it's called Bud Springs by me, and they do mostly leaf springs, but they also rebuild those drive shafts as well. So finding like a truck shop is probably going to be your best bet to get that to happen. So you have two IDIs, two 6 liters. You need a 7.3 Power Stroke. Well, you're closer to completing the whole realm than me. You need a 6.4, a 7.3, and a 6.7. You need to kind of complete it. I think that'd be cool one day to kind of have all of them. Joseph, what's up, man? A lot of some of the OGs joining here. I think I have to extend it now. I can't say I can't say no to the OGs once they come in here. Joseph, how are you doing, man? Looking forward to some 6.0 love in the new year. Thank you. Thank you very much. Joseph, I wish you and your family a happy new year, and a healthy one as well. I wish all of you guys that. Uh, it's so good to see some of the OGs come around the channel here. We are going to be doing some. I actually have 2 videos done and edited on the 6 liter. They're both kind of low key. Like one's kind of just a recap of me throwing another turbo in for testing. I start addressing the oil leak coming from my another cracked rocker box, because that's what my truck does. What else do we have coming? I have a leather seat swap that I did. So there's some 6.0 stuff that's coming, coupled in with some 6.7 stuff as well, which I'm trying to do a lot of back and forth between the two. So, 2025, man, we're going to do a lot. I have a big video coming on wiring of the 6.0. Still doing great in part from your video. Great. Hey, thanks, man. I'm glad they've been helpful. It's quick. Still got the old 05. How's she doing? But yeah, I'm going to be doing a big video on regrounding it, adding a big crossover wire. I got 4-aught power wire to go from battery to battery. Going to try out a new terminal, battery terminal as well. If I like the one setup, I'm going to buy another one for the passenger side, but we're going to start with just one for now and see how I like it, if I want to keep with it. Definitely a great way to see some of you guys come in that have been hanging out for so long. And those of you guys that are kind of new to the channel and haven't seen me, I'm only getting back to regular live streams. I used to live stream weekly, every week, without fail. Sometimes, depending on how like my schedule was, I'd try to live stream on like a Sunday, then I'd hit a Thursday or a Friday. So sometimes you got 2 in a week. But this is part when my channel was its most successful. This is one of the things I did a lot of. I would live stream for a couple to several hours, literally every week. And I don't know, it's a lot of fun for me. I really do enjoy it. So that's one of the things that kind of I'm trying to get back to doing is this live stream for long periods of time and hanging out with you guys. Should I change my transmission fluid with 114 on it or leave it? Justin, what I would do is I would not flush your transmission. I would drain it. And then I would drain your transmission. I would get an aftermarket transmission pan as well. Get the 08 filter set up. Get one of the aftermarket deep dish pans, Mag High Tech, BD Diesel, AFE, PPE. They all make one. Any one of them will work. PPE and the Mag High Tech are probably my favorite ones out there, but any of them will truthfully work. You'll get a better filter with the 08 style. And then that pan will help add rigidity to the transmission, preventing torsional torque on it, which is one of the issues that happens with the 6-liter transmission over time. But basically, drain all the fluid and then fill it up. Do not flush your transmission. Um, that is what I would recommend, and that'll help you. That's a good maintenance tip. I think I think typically transmission fluid is one of those things that gets neglected. I think it's one of those, like, every 50 to 70,000 miles, it really should be done. It's probably never been done in your truck. And if somebody claimed they did it, I probably wouldn't trust them, and I would turn around and do it anyway. Just spent another 12K on her second time around. I'm with you there, man. It's what you did you do a whole engine again? And if so, what did you go with? Doug, I've been away from diesel stuff for a couple years, but when I started watching stuff, your videos came up to the top. Oh, I'm glad to hear I came up to the top, because I actually was looking this up the other day. In 2020, I think, was like my best year. And I am far off that mark from those times, but in 2020 was my best year as a whole. Or like, was it 21? I think it was 21. I lied. I think like March of 21 was my best year, and it has just fallen a lot because I went back to school and worked full time. I didn't have time to do stuff like this, so it definitely took a long time. So I'm hoping to build back up to make sure my videos are popping up. Like, some videos that should have been just hits, like my no start condition video, diagnosis video, still only sits at 673 views. That is something that should definitely be like much, much higher than that. So here's hoping, man. I'm trying to really grow this up. Greg, I'm glad you guys love it. You're right. I should say, I do love doing this stuff. It's been fun. It is fun. Use an 08 pan and change fluid. Don't flush it. I agree. What's your thoughts on air dog and a sump? I think it's a good setup. I run a fast with a sump, and then a regulated return. I plan to delete the fuel bowl at some point for my regulated return as well. But I'm not super familiar with AirDog as a whole. I like Fast a lot. I do think AirDog and Fast are both very, very similar products. I think you'd be happy with either one. I know early on I've heard people talk about bad stuff with both of them, but they seem to be pretty squared away setups now. Either one I think is great. Mongoose, what's up, brother? If you didn't get an alert, you should check to make sure you have alerts on. I say that as one of your favorite YouTube channels. I only drain and fill every change. Paper filter on my transmission. Yep. Drain and fill. That's the way to do it. I do need to check that paper or toilet paper roll filter that they have up at the front on the 6 liters, because I have never messed with that. And 200,000 miles, I have a feeling it's not doing anything. Cracked head. That sucks. That is one of my biggest pet peeves with the 6-liter head, is those cracks. I wish they would be a little bit better than they are about that. That's also why I tend to attempt to avoid factory heads. I will say this: UCF Machine Shop, they do a lifetime warranty on heads, and they build off OEM heads, but they machine out the hardened valve seat. So Ford hardens the iron head itself. It's not a pressed-in valve seat. What happens when you harden iron is it becomes very brittle, leading to cracks that will crack into even unhardened areas once they start. So they machine that hardened seat out and put a pressed-in valve seat, and that gives you a much more reliable head, a lot less likely to crack. So that is one thing. They do tend to do a pretty good job. 6.0 stuff in general has fallen off. I think forums are way less active than they were 4 or 5 excuse me, 4 or 5 years ago, 10 years ago, definitely for sure. I used to be on um, Powerstroke.org was the forum I was always on when I first got my truck, and probably for like 3, 4 years. Uh, but I think they've taken Facebook groups have really just taken over that, because the Facebook group pages, they are constantly busy, for better or for worse, but they are constantly busy. And that's where I go a lot. That's where that's where I post videos. Like I won't post my videos up there, but if people have issues and I have a video that it correlates to, I'll send the video there. What's hard is a lot of the Facebook groups are run by like the same 4 people. And I do think at times there's they all tend to own companies as well. It can be a kind of savage place. And the only reason I'm aware of that is due to my affiliation with Turbo Time USA and some of how they've been treated with some old marketing that they had that was not the best marketing plan. And we talked about that going into 2024, and they've changed that. And I think they've kind of come around and they've had a much better outlook since they made some changes. I don't use the inline paper roll after changing to the 08 Transpan setup. I don't plan to. I still like the aftermarket pans with the thicker flange, and that cast iron. Like, it's just a stiffer setup, and it is helpful to the 6-liter transmission as a whole. I don't know that the 6R suffers the same issues. The 10-speed, it hasn't really been out long enough to know if there's any issues there, but I think they learned a lot with the 5R and fixed some of the design flaws. That, again, I think people like Suncoast helped kind of really pioneer some of those fixes. I think they took some of those and fixed a lot of the stuff in the future that is current production stuff. Yeah, it's quick. I actually want to bypass it. I just haven't. I want to empty whatever's in there if it's hopefully still intact. But I would like to just get rid of it because there's no point. I have an 08 filter in my transmission pan. There's no real reason for that. And once they don't flow enough, once that filter's clogged, there's a bypass valve anyway. So I guess I don't technically have to mess with it, but I'd like to. I wouldn't mind starting. So here's what's really hard. I don't have the time to really moderate my own page. That's a big task to make sure it stays where I want to. I wouldn't mind starting one. I've actually looked into a little, like, even Discord and stuff. I would like to start a place with a community outside. Like, YouTube is currently, like, from a financial standpoint, YouTube is what helps me make money to continue to make videos. And I do need that to continue to make some of these things. There's things I do I wouldn't otherwise do if I wasn't getting a little bit of an income. But I would like to do like a Discord page where, like, you guys can have a community outside this platform that is safe, and we can open up to other conversations, not just truck stuff, and it just be a perfectly safe place to kind of have that conversation and not worry about some of the things I might worry about on this platform, and making sure I'm existing within their rules. This will currently, until there's another alternative, this will be where I post my videos, but with some of those other things, I wouldn't mind messing with as well. Discord is a place I've given a good hard look to. I don't know yet for sure, but I would like to do something in the future. I'm looking at some type of engine / exhaust brake for towing recommendations. Does tow haul button do engine braking? No. So 6-liter wise, the option could be you could look at installing like an actual exhaust brake. that would go in your exhaust line. I believe they're normally air compressor controlled, so it's a little more advanced. What I would look at having a tuner turn on using the VGT as your exhaust brake. That's what I would do, because I will say this: in the 6.7, in the 6.7, that's how they do it. That there isn't like a dedicated exhaust brake; it's the VGT system working as an exhaust brake as you are trying to brake. In the 6-liter, you just have the transmission engine brake feature, which is really nice. It does a lot more than many people think. It's a good setup, but you can get a little more by having them also incorporate it into your turbo. It's referred to as a Jake brake, in that it's not a true Jake brake. It's not like a valve train braking system, but they can do it, and you can get some added benefit from them as well. So that's what I would do. Instead of looking at, if you do it that way, then yes, when you hit your tow haul, that mode should be activated in correlation with the braking feature. 6.0 training my income. Some days I hope to get a big 6.0 for life tattoo, but can't afford it with my 6.0 bills. That will happen, Greg. That was one of the reasons I originally started the channel, was to help save 6-liter owners money. And then I did a crazy build, and I think I cost 6 liters a lot of money, because a lot of people wanted to kind of recreate what I did. And that was one of my favorite builds, honestly. I can think of a time, avoid steep downhill grades. When I was running 175 stock nozzled injectors and a Power Max turbo. After I did the first build with a Colt Stage 2 cam, I had my intake manifold, my exhaust manifolds. It wasn't a crazy build, but I remember a time I was in South Carolina with my camper, and I was driving to the gym because I'm a weirdo that works out down while I'm on vacation. And it was just on a tow tune still. But it was just the nicest driving. It was the most fun I had driving the truck. It was not making the most horsepower, but just the way it performed, like, I loved that. That was my favorite time driving my truck, actually. And then, as it turned out, that cam was not dropping, and I did not have near enough valve recession for it. And I eventually took that engine out. It was quite sad. 6.0 is the ultimate while you're in their money pit. It can be. It can be. Once you get hooked at like a gambling addiction, I'm going to say gambling is still worse, but I hear you. So I've ran Warrens. I've never run Holders. A guy named Jared Flowers built me my current set of 205/30s. So I'll say this. I think as long as you get their premium injectors, I think you're good to go. I wouldn't worry outside that. If it's their premiums, you're good. I do not watch Left Lane Diesel. I'm familiar with them, but I don't actually watch him. I know he's become, about the time that I took a break, he was kind of throttled down and really pushing to grow his channel. So he is I'm looking at some of his I pulled his channel up here now. Man, he's got a lot of trucks now, it looks. See, Or is it just a different 6-liter and a 6.7? I don't know. He's really into these truck pulls. Like, he's about it. Let her eat, man. That's neat. But yeah, I don't really watch his channel. Nothing against him, per se. Just don't really watch his stuff. He probably doesn't even know who the heck I am. I will say I do have one thing. His crankcase vent thing, uh like, so he started this store, and that's great. I do have a hard time with $200 for this this kit he sells. I'm not saying he doesn't have some decent stuff. I also have a hard time with his one-piece up pipe being $350. Like, I just struggle with the value of some of the stuff. Like, it's like that doesn't really cost that. Uh, $289 for a set of taillight conversions. Yeah, I'm not trying to knock him. He's trying to make a living. Good on him. But I do struggle with the value when I see some people bring his stuff up on some of the forums because it's steep. It's steep for some of that stuff. So I digress a little bit. My bad. I do wish him well. I hope he continues to be successful in all of his endeavors, though. Um, Oil cooler flush worth doing. If your oil cooler is working fine, zero reason to do it. An oil cooler flush is really meant as a last ditch effort to save an oil cooler before replacing it. Some people have been successful with it. The ones that tend to need to use an air compressor with the water to push stuff out. I know Diesel Tech Ron has a video of him with, I believe it was Diesel Tech Ron, where he pulls both of the block plugs for the coolant and has the radiator open as well, and is basically runs a hose directly into the degas bottle, filling everything up, and then runs the engine and even revs it up, which pushes stuff out. And that was how I believe it was him. Again, I could be wrong, but I'm pretty certain it was him. That's part of how he helped kind of push some of the debris out of those systems. That wouldn't fix your oil cooler, but that was part of how he flushed them. Yeah, no reason to do it. If your oil cooler, so how you test an oil cooler on a 6-liter, get it up to operating temp, so roughly 185, 190 degrees. Go on a flat highway, drive 65 miles an hour, set cruise control. And see, and if it is still, if it is, as long as it is within 15 degrees or less. At 15 degrees, you need to start considering what you're going to do. But if you're at 10 to 12 or lower, you're fine. Your oil cooler is still healthy. It's within spec. I wouldn't mess with anything at that point. Powerstroke Help did that. There's another guy we lost. I didn't agree with all of his videos, but he did seem to be a good guy. And I can tell you this, I never heard of a customer being mad with his work. So, and he helped start putting like a ton of information out there. I hope somebody still runs his shop. I don't know. Like, I just pulled their website up because he had a lot of like information out there. There's free tech help, Fubar, very broken Power Strokes. Does anyone know if he's still like if somebody's operating his shop? Automatic Garage might be. Oil core recommendations for when I need to buy one. Um, I still kind of say Ford. Here's why. Um, I know a lot of people say they're crap now. But Ford, if it's gonna break, they'll warranty it. They're the easiest ones to deal with a warranty. Um, I've heard some good stuff about um Bless Performance and PPE. I would not buy Sinister. I would still probably go Ford, in my opinion. Uh, I have heard some people. I have heard some people say dormant oil coolers were actually fine and just used Alliant gasket kits on them. But I'm not 100% sure outside that. Those would be my top ones to consider. Mikey does the videos now. Might be Ron. Automatic Garage. I'm not familiar with this one. No, I have seen this guy. I'd love to at some point. I'd love for at some point to get like a lot of these Power Stroke channels together and have a hangout like somewhere. Like even if it's, I mean, I'm a ways away from being able to do this, but I think it'd be cool to like do like a tour, like go to a couple different places around the country for Power Stroke stuff and like spend a day, like basically like spend 10 days, 2 weeks of just like driving around the country to different well-known Power Stroke places, staying the heck out of California though, because I think you guys all know, and I know my sixth grader is not meant for California anymore. It was actually originally a California truck that went to Texas, then I shipped it up here when I bought it. I had to look up Power Stroke help. Uh, they still do a lot of views. 105,000 views in the last 30 days. I'm at 31.6. And I think my best month ever was like 64, 65. So yeah, they're running the channel still. 3 videos in the last month. Good. I'm glad. I'm genuinely glad to hear that. Oh, it was a recent thing. I'm sorry, guys. I'm like going off. So, Power Stroke Help is still alive 1 year ago. Bill's What looks like Bill's last video was approximately a year ago too. And then they kind of slowly started doing more and more. So Bill seemed to be a good businessman. That's one thing I can say about him. And his guys, I mean, they seem to be taken care of. That's cool. They're continuing what he started. Best motor oil in your opinion? I think best motor oil gets so blown out of proportion. Ford Motorcraft is what I use almost all the time. I wouldn't mind trying Schaefer's at some point just to try it. I think it's probably a better oil from what I've seen. I don't think it makes a huge difference at the end of the day. I think making sure you're doing 5,000-mile oil changes is a much better practice than caring about if you have the latest and greatest stuff. So Ford Motorcraft is also readily available at Advanced Auto and stuff like that. Schaefer's is not. The one I will say I recommend staying away from, and I think this goes back and forth a little bit, is Rotella T4, T6, T5? Or is it T5 and T6? I can't remember exactly. I ran it for a bit, and overall, I thought it ran well. I did it for a couple oil changes years and years ago. Back then, it was expensive, and I was like, I don't really see a point in this. I thought my truck ran a little bit better, but then Warren Diesel has also said multiple times that they leave a weird film on their injectors, and they actually won't warranty stuff, I've heard at times for it. So it's hard. Like, I wouldn't go that route. It's really my only one I would stay away from. Make sure it's a diesel oil, 1540 for the 6-liter. Rock and roll. Don't get too caught up in it. I think people spend too much time worrying about that. From a protecting your investment standpoint, Motorcraft is perfectly fine. Nah, I wouldn't even waste it on synthetic. I think Schaefer's is a synthetic. There it was. I'm trying to think who sells Schaefer's. I haven't been to Kill Devil Diesel's website in a long time, but I think they sell Schaefer's. Yes. That is not an awful price. $3.78. Synthetic plus diesel engine oil. I don't know what synthetic plus means for that, but so I'll say this: blends are a waste, because actually to be considered a blend, it's like less than a full percentage of it has to be synthetic to be a blend. So that's a complete waste of money. Engine oil has come a long way in the last 40 years. In the last 20 years, I don't think we've really had any major breakthroughs that have proven a whole lot. So I think, again, sticking with 5,000-mile oil changes, that's my goal all the time. That's going to keep a truck running right. It's going to prevent premature failures. I like arch oil in 6 liters. I don't think you need to really to go synthetic for the sake of doing it. I don't think it's a big deal. 3 gallons for $39. And Mongoose, you've run that a long time, right? I Yeah, Joseph, I'm with you there. Um, I Motorcraft just works. It's reasonably priced. I don't have any issue with it, and I've never known anyone to actually have an issue. Like, I feel like when people were looking for like best oil, it was people saying, "Hey, I'm willing to spend a little more if it protects my investment." Especially guys that like use theirs for work. That are like, "Hey, like I'm in this truck. I'm driving. Like it's getting worked hard. I want to protect this because it's part of how I make money." And I think that's really where this like, "Hey, I want to protect my investment." Protect it with Motorcraft is perfectly fine. It's normally reasonably priced. Um, Even the Kirkland brand that Mongoose talks about, probably perfectly fine, man. As long as it's for diesels. Diesel 1540, rock and roll, man. Best fuel treatment, Arch Oil for the 6 liter, in my opinion, is kind of the go-to. I don't know that you can run it. So you can't. So Arch oil additive, I run in my 6 liter in the oil. You can't necessarily run that in all diesels, so you got to be careful there. Um, Hot Shots is another quality one for oil treatment. For fuel treatment, again, Hot Shots and Arch Oil come down. They do not remove water. I can't think of the company for if you're looking to get out water out of your system. Uh, Hold on. Where is it? It's not coming up. The one I'm looking for is not coming up. I'm sure the Hot Shots one's probably good. Uh, Power Service is normally decent stuff, but this is not. The shop I go to carries it, and I can't think what the heck it's called. There's one called F Bomb, though. That's funny. I need to get the name of the one I'm thinking of. That does really good at removing water from diesel. That's not it. It's really annoying that it's not popping up because I thought for sure it would just be like one of the first ones, and it's not. Um, Overfilling oil, yeah, it probably can cause some degree of issue. You might get a little extra um, blow by. You might get a little extra oil coming out of your crankcase vent until it kind of balances out. So, like, I wouldn't try cramming 16. What is it? I think it's 15 quarts. I wouldn't try getting an extra quart in, hoping it helped. At the same time, if I was a half a quart high, I wouldn't worry about it either. Like I wouldn't try to drain that off, but I wouldn't go over the recommended line. Uh, at least not deliberately. If I'm a little over, like when I use Arch Oil in my 6 liter, I don't use it on my 6.7, but my 6 liter, I will put that through. Like I'll put my 15 quarts in, and then I'll put the Arch Oil in on top of it, and I don't think anything of it. They say you should take a little oil out to compensate for the Arch Oil. I'm not doing that. I also do oil analysis on every oil change. I don't do oil analysis, but I know some people really like them. Uh, my only issue with an oil analysis is some people use them and say, I'm going to extend my oil change to 10,000, 15,000. And I just disagree with that. I don't like it. Even if they're saying, hey, you're good to go, I feel better doing 5,000-mile oil changes. Um, I'm not saying I don't ever hit 5,500. I've never been at 6,000. Like that has happened, sure. But I try to stick to the 5,000 and call it a day. Yep, Hot Shots is definitely good stuff. And yeah, a big fan of arch oil as well. I mean, you guys have seen. I've even done a video on arch oil. Somebody accused me of being paid by arch oil, to which I say I wish. Uh, no, I don't change my oil change schedule every 5K. How often do you change your oil? I will say I think my one issue with this is uh with the Huey injectors, I know they're very hard on oil. Is it heat? Is that the one I'm thinking of? Nope, that's not the one. But I have heard people use that pretty well. Hot Shots is coming up a lot. Somebody from Hot Shots emailed me years ago, right before COVID hit, and they were asking if I'd be willing to try products. COVID hit, and then I never heard from them again. I imagine that had an effect on them, unfortunately. Good batteries are definitely crucial. Currently, I'm running Decas. I like them so far, but so I'm gonna do a video where I clean up all the factory grounding points on the 6 liter. To the frame, to the fender, we'll put some grease down, trying to protect those areas, clean up the lugs as well, and make sure that they are how they need to be. We're gonna add a lot of grounds as well. So a couple different things there, but I think these trucks are old enough that they warrant, excuse me, some kind of maintenance on the grounds. My truck's an '04, so we're at 21 years old, coming up on 22 realistically. It was probably built in late '03, or very, very early '04. Oh, I didn't know Hot Shots got bought out. Doug, the bypass filter is never a bad idea. It's not something I'm into, but it's definitely not a bad idea in from like a maintaining your oil and keeping everything, um, as healthy as can be. Joseph, I'm about to do a big video on it, along with all the measurements to reground and set stuff back up. Some added grounds we're going to do as well once we clean all the factory ones up. Excuse me, we're gonna go back in and do. We're gonna add some. So I'm gonna add each battery to frame, from frame to engine block on each side. Um, The braided cables are going to get cleaned up and maybe even added like an 8 gauge to each of them. We're going to do where the PCM grounds and the FICM grounds, we're going to add them to the frame. So from that down to the frame, we'll do like another 8 gauge. And then I have one aught will be from frame to block and frame to each battery negative side. I have a 4-aught cable for connecting each side. I need new body mounts. Their cab mounts are on the way as well, because I need them bad on my 6 liter. And then I'm gonna run a 1 gauge. I'm not gonna like some people like look to decorate their engine bay with these wiring kits. I'm gonna try to make mine look as factory could be, and we're going to run one from the alternator to the passenger side battery. We'll probably go over by like the valve cover down, and then right to my battery. Well, I'll probably go to fender for a fusible link, and then from the fender to the actual positive terminal is probably what I'll do. I may add another cable down to my starter as well. I'm not sure on that one, but I might add an additional 1/0 down to my starter. I won't take any of the I'm not removing any factory parts. All the factory ones are going to stay there. We just are adding stuff to it, and that way the wires can share the load on them to kind of protect things. First ground today, boys, should be trans to frame. Yes. So this is another ground is going to be from my transmission to the frame. And again, all of them will have measurements and stuff on them. Joseph, I'm going to do my cab mounts the same way. Probably 2 jacks, 2 jacks, and one at a time. So yeah, no, we're gonna reground that as well, and I'm gonna have measurements for each ground that I do, and like every cable is going to have its measurement. So some of those kits are crazy expensive, and it's wild to me. I don't know how they still sell because they are so, in my opinion, overpriced. I have about $300 in stuff. A lot of those kits are charging $650, and that's just crazy expensive. Now they're probably using premium stuff. Some of the cheaper kits I've seen out there don't have everything that you should have to do these things. They're probably using lesser quality. They're probably using like copper clad aluminum wire, which doesn't have the same resistance as copper. Tinned copper is preference. So I use a 99% oxygen free copper and 1% tinned. That tinning actually protects against corrosion and stuff in the element. It's a marine grade product at that point, which is meant to deal with some pretty harsh conditions. So I'm going to have all the measurements for each piece, which lugs I used. I'll have links to everything, the tools I use. I have about $300 and stuff, and that's with me needing to buy a tool to be able to crimp up to a 4/0 cable, which is like, I mean, freaking this thick. It's massive. And I had to get wire lugs for it. So like, there's a lot for it. But again, $300 compared to $600-700 that some places are charging. And like, I mean, that the stuff they put over top of it, like the snakeskin shielding, yeah, that's super cheap. I bought some. I don't know that I'm going to run it. I might just put all mine in regular wire loom. I think that'll protect it better. We'll see. I don't know. Maybe not. But yeah, it's crazy. I want to make a video where you guys can just see the whole process, buy what you need to, and save a bunch of money. You should sell a kit. I wouldn't be opposed to making kits for people. I don't know what I would charge. I would be open to what I was making on each kit though. And I'll be able to price it out. I will say this, I'd probably recommend people have relatively bland kits with wire loom instead of like anything crazy fancy like the snakeskin stuff I don't love. But I would say this, if there were some people that were looking to have me build a kit for them, I'd potentially be willing to do that for subscribers. I'm not looking to make that like a business per se, but I'd probably put together a couple kits for people. Especially because I do kind of take issue in how much some people are charging for it. Hey, Quick, it was great to see you again, man. I hope you get to keep stopping in on some of the other videos we're gonna we're going to keep doing this, but great to see some of the OGs coming back around and hanging out with me. I really do appreciate your support, guys. Good night, Quick. Hope you have a good one, brother. So I'd have to really sit down and figure out like how much time and stuff would be in it. But I would consider building kits for again, subscribers. I would not make it a business. I was looking at like, if you're buying that stuff and you have deals with people because you're doing it for as like part of your job, uh, I just have a hard time with the idea of like people charging $600-700 and something that's like $300 in stuff. I could understand. I want to say 450. It's like, okay, I get it. Like that's fair. Like I didn't factor in new terminals, I will say that. But terminals are relatively cheap. Let's look up a pair of terminals that everybody uses. $70-80 for what are some of the more common ones I see people using. Here's one of the more common ones. This is one of the most common ones, and this is only $19 for two, so $40 for all of them. Now I will say the ones I got these new concept ones that let me keep the factory stuff and just bolt on. We're gonna see how much I like them, if I like them at all. But they're a little more expensive. They were almost $50. I'm with you, Mongoose. I just struggle because I think people pay it because there isn't really a lot of people building custom kits for these. So they do kind of have a market. But we got 6.0 money. It's really just when you like, if I can get stuff for, again, we're talking ballpark 300. Let's call it 320. Just to be safe. Shipping, they're heavy. It's probably a little expensive for shipping. So I just don't see like any way I twist it, I can't see why anybody would charge more than 500, and I even think 500 is salty. I can't remember, like, I guess I can find it and see. I don't want to say the person that I'm thinking of that is in this. Where is the price for some of this stuff? I can't find the price, and I don't want to spend too much time looking for it. Was it under the pictures? Maybe it was under the pictures. And I mean, I do agree. Whatever people are willing to pay for it, that is what it's worth. I mean, that's just what it is. So 625. So this is a 4-aught crossover cable, a 4-aught starter cable, which a 4-aught starter cable seems ridiculous with what else is there. A 1-aught would be sufficient. An alternator power cable, an alternator ground cable, 2 battery to frame cables, 2 battery to motor cables, passenger battery to fender. Yeah, that seems just expensive. Anyway, I digress. But no, I would be willing to make kits. I would probably be looking at making like, I don't know. It depends how fast I could crank them out. Like I said, I'll make them for you guys. I'm not going into business, but I'd probably be looking like, I shudder to even say a number. I have to think about it because I definitely don't have the time to do it for free, but I also don't want to rip anybody off. And since it's not how I would make a living, yeah, I'll get back to you guys. If they turn out nice and I like what I do, I'll make sure you guys are taken care of. I think there was 2 of you. I think it was Mongoose and Joseph, if I remember right, that said they would buy a kit. If you guys like what I do, wait for the video to come out and see like actually what I do and what some of the options are. And then, if you like how it comes out, we'll get you hooked up. Or excuse me, I'll get you hooked up with a kit and, I'll build it for you. Plus, I will say this, I'm actually kind of intrigued about doing this because it seemed like a fun little job, to be honest. And something it's not something I really get to do a lot of. So it was just, truthfully, something I was genuinely excited to mess with. So there's that. Anyway, guys, this has been a very long live stream. I've had so much fun. Thank you guys all for coming and hanging out. Those of you guys coming back in, every 6 owner says, I think it'll be kind of fun. Maybe I'm wrong. But thank you guys for coming and hanging out. OG guys that are returning, that I'm getting to talk to again. Thank you guys all. It's always good seeing you. Those of you new guys, if you haven't already, smash that subscribe button. Doug, you're very welcome, man. I hope to see you in the next live stream. Look for some videos to come out. I have one I'm going to finish adding some information on, and we're going to send that out probably for tomorrow. Will be when that video goes live. So look for a couple videos this week. I believe they're both 6-liter videos. And then we have a 6.7 video coming with a small little aesthetic upgrade I did. So thank you guys again. Don't forget to quick smash that like button if you haven't already. Subscribe if you're not, and I'll see you guys in the next upload.